You got it.
Okay, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining the annual retreat of the MCC. We're going to get started. But we have a really packed agenda, and I hope to finish this by 12:30. We may go a little bit over, but I'm going to try to do everything I can to keep us on schedule. We're going to start with just quick introductions of every member of the council, and then we'll hear an update from Supervisor Horsley. So let's just go around. Let's go with Greg first. Just a quick introduction. Later, you'll have the opportunity to state your priorities.
What am I supposed to say? I mean, I think
I just
people
say,
kind of know me.
Yeah, people know you. You can just say, hi, my name's Greg. That's fine.
I'm still Greg.
Okay. How about Lisa? I'm sorry, not Lisa. Jill.
That's funny because a lot of people at work call me Lisa. So
yeah, I don't know why there's 2 4-letter names, and then we have Lisa on here. So
yeah, I am not Lisa. I'm Jill Grant, and I live in El Granada. I'm new to the Midcoast Community Council, and so I am looking for mentors and to be educated, not just by residents, but by other members of the council. And you can always, tell me whatever you want, and I'm open to learning more. And I really appreciate being on the council. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And Dan?
Dan Haggerty, El Granada. Happy to serve my 3rd term here.
Great. Let's go with Dave next.
Hi, I'm Dave Olson. Well into my 2nd extended term.
Great. Len?
Len Erickson from El Granada. This past weekend, at the start of the weekend, I was very serious in our responsibilities, so I traveled to Monterey to see the 18th hole where there's extensive armoring and enjoyed the trip.
Claire?
Claire Two-Top. I think I've been on the council 5 years now, and I'm in Moss Beach, and good morning.
And I'm Michelle Weil. I've been on the council for 2 years now, and I'm the chair this year. I live in Moss Beach. Okay, great. So Supervisor Horsley, I want to hand it over to you at this point to just give a quick update on the state of the county and everything that you've been doing.
Okay, Michelle, I am not going to give you the whole state of the county because there's a whole lot of stuff that goes in the district. The district has essentially about 150,000 people, and I have to represent cities from Menlo Park, San Carlos, Redwood City, Half Moon Bay, Pacifica. So we'll skip most of that stuff and just go mostly on the coast side. And maybe some of you do know that just to briefly in Pescadero, I've had a number of big projects in Pescadero for, first of all, improving the marsh. We did work with the RCD on that. And now what we are doing is we have a fire station down there, and that needs to be, it's essentially inadequate. And so we're going to move it to the high school. And the high school doesn't have a good water supply. So we're also at the same time working with the state, the high school district, and the county to move our what's called CSA 11 all the way to the high school. We've been working on that for about a year. I think it's going to take another year. It's going to also require an LCP amendment to be able to do it. The other thing that I'm really quite proud of is Tonitas Creek Park. I saw the renderings of the proposal that is going to go to the board sometime in the next few months. It's really pretty exciting. It'll be the newest addition to our park system. We also, you all know, this pretty controversial. We were looking at buying a couple of hotels on the coast. We ended up focusing on one, mostly because, man, we could have bought 2, but I just thought that there's only so much turmoil in my life that I want to deal with. So I focused on the one in Half Moon Bay because city of Half Moon Bay has been looking for a long time. They actually have a pretty significant problem with homelessness people in the creeks behind Safeway and in other areas. And We know that the actual number of homeless people on the whole coast, if you go from Pacifica to Half Moon Bay, is about 230. That was our last count at I think it was 2018. We were going to do another count this year, but because of COVID, I don't think we are going to do it. It usually requires, massive involvement of people going out early in the morning and going all to all these encampments and counting people. In any case, the idea isn't to get somebody, I think what people worry about is that we're going to allow drugs and alcohol and junk and stuff at the facility. That's not the way they operate. They are required to meet rules and standards. And I think so. We will eventually have a citizens oversight committee, and I don't know if somebody from Midcoast wants to participate in that. But I mean, even though it is in the city of Half Moon Bay, reality is it serves the whole coast. It has about 52 rooms, and it ended up costing us about $7.7 million. The original price, because we did an accurate appraisal, it wasn't worth the asking price, so the owner accepted the $7,750,000, something to that effect. It's currently being operated by Samaritan House, but we will do an RFP for a longer term operator, and we will have a citizen's oversight to work with it. I don't know that we're going to have 52 people there. Maybe it's less. I'm not really sure about that. And the goal is to get people who are homeless, who are living in the creek, and get them to accept services. It's not to just say here, instead of, panhandling in the street and doing drugs or alcohol or whatever, you can now live in this place. That's not the case at all. You have to agree to essentially no longer be dabbling in substance abuse, and you have to agree to accept services as well. And the long-term goal isn't that you're going to live there forever. The goal is that it's for a set period of time, and eventually want those people to be back on their feet. And that fits into the county's overall goal of eliminating homelessness. Not only the county, it's the state of California. We did buy a couple of other hotels in Redwood City with the same intent. And I think we probably would be looking for another one in the north part of the county around Daly City or South San Francisco. So, I think we finished the Moss Beach Park. I think that's done. Quarry Park, that pump track that people wanted will be, I think it's, I saw the drawings of it. I think that's coming to the board fairly soon. So that will be a significant improvement. We're working on shoreline improvements in Princeton. We've always had lots of problems with illegal residential uses and people living in RVs and convex boxes. And remember some time back, we had one guy who he had a storage box, and he and his girlfriend were living there, and he would leave in the daytime and then lock her into the convex box. So wait a second, you can't do that. So we had to do things like, finding people who are living in these concrete boats, and that's sort of a constant problem. But the shoreline improvement, the idea was to make it a greater access to the shore through a trail in the back of Pescadero. And so there are some ongoing projects. I think the next one is right by the yacht club. Essentially would be improving the access to both the water and for people. There's a lot of kayakers, and they come out of the water. It's kind of a mishmash of rocks and stones that have been dumped over the years. So we are working on an improvement there. We are doing a lot of fuel, at least fuel reduction projects. Our Parks Department is I think they're labeling some 10 of the highest priority projects for fuel reduction, many of which are on the coast side, but certainly not limited to the coast side. If you look at CAL FIRE's map of the county, there's a whole lot of areas that are at risk of wildland fire. So we are working with, again, with the RCD on doing, first of all, they manage what is called the Fire Safe Council. Fire Safe Council involves fire departments and cities. And they work essentially on fuel reduction projects. RCD has also been charged by the county to work on a programmatic and streamlined permitting process, because we have, on the coast side, as you may know, that you really require a coastal permit, not to take one down a single tree, but if you take down a series of trees, that requires a coastal permit. So we were working on having some kind of a streamlined process so that we could have one permit to fit all occasions. The other thing the RCD is, I think, a hidden jewel of the county. They don't really have if you know much about them, I don't know if you do, but they don't really have enforcement authority, but they do many projects to help landowners, property owners, restoration of creek areas. I've worked with them pretty extensively, and I think maybe others have as well. I know the Harbor District works with them as well. And we are working on trying to get a more secure revenue base for them. It is a remarkable organization led by a remarkable ED, Kelly Nelson. The Cypress Point, that's as you know, it's really controversial. It's a potential 70 units for affordable housing. That LCP is going to the Coastal Commission. If it is approved, then the next stage would be, I think there'd have to be an EIR, and there would have to be significant improvements to the connectivity. Essentially things like there have to be some level of sidewalks. Doesn't have to be concrete, but there have to be some better connectivity on in those streets, Carlos Street and some of the others, Sierra. I can't remember all of them. Sometimes my GPS, my head escapes me. I did used to live on Sierra Street at California, so I do know that area pretty well from walking around there with my children when they were little. And my guess would be if that project ever is approved, it would require some significant improvements at California and Highway 1. And I know that the MCC has requested studies on roundabout, and I know that's the preferred solution. Not, some people would like to have nothing, but if there is any improvements, you have to either, it has to either be in signalization or a roundabout. The other major project is that has been around for is like, I feel like it's the bane of my existence. That's Big Wave. We are constantly blamed for slowing it down. In fact, the problem with the developers is that they made lots of commitments in the development agreement to doing a number of improvements, some traffic improvements, roadway improvements, bike and ped improvements, and it seems that the project is, to some extent, seems to constantly change. It was at one time there were going to be an office complex, and then it doesn't appear to be any takers for an office complex. And so the latest thing we've heard is that they are now proposing storage, basically high-end storage for, I assume, for people with high-end vehicles. Then their claim is that, well, because we have high-end storage, we're no longer generating traffic, and so we shouldn't have to do anything about Cypress and Highway 1. And the other argument as well, the traffic at Cypress and 1 already meets the warrant for some signalization or control. So we have to, kind of navigate that. If it ever gets built, I know that they are doing connecting to essentially the water. So they've finally coordinated between Granada Community Service District and MWSD. But But there are a number of conditions of that development agreement that I believe that they will be going back to the board and asking for some reconsideration. And the county's also considered, well, one of the things that we have considered is that then the south parcel is was supposed to be boat storage. We have considered buying that south parcel for a potential site for a community center. So that, I don't know if that'll ever happen, but that's a proposal. Gray Whale Cove kind of sits up there. The state's requirements are, seem to have, well, you changed considerably. What we originally wanted was essentially to do some asphalting of formalizing the parking lot. So with some asphalt, the state parks asked that we not asphalt the whole park because they didn't want to have to maintain it. So we scaled that back to some extent. We also plan to have like a acceleration lane going south and moving the entrance to the parking lot a little bit on the south side so that improves the visibility for people heading south. And then the original idea was to put simply a crosswalk with flashing lights. The state says, no, that's too dangerous. You need to have the hawk lights. So we continually ask them, why hawk lights? Why can't we do the RRFB, which stands for rectangular flashing, rectangular rapid flashing beams? And they say, no, that's not safe enough. Why not? Right now you've got nothing. And then on the other side, I said, oh, they made us, it also has to be ADA compliant. So the other side, we have to put in a sidewalk. And we told them, wait a second, the beach is not ADA compliant. You can't get down to the beach. So they've really jacked up the cost for us. So I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure that I'm, with the pandemic and collapsing economy, I'm not sure that I'm willing to ask the county to come up with a couple $1 million for the construction, when in fact, it's really the beach, the roadway, and the parking lot are essentially state facilities, not county facilities. And I do think that hawk light is way too controversial. Now, the difference is that what they say is that the hawk light you can only activate it one time and then you can't reactivate it again. The RRFB, you can keep on somebody can stand there and activate the thing all day. I don't think people would do that, but that's what they think is a significant improvement. The next one is the Medio Bridge. I know we have some differences of opinion on that, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I do remember actually Dave Olson, Lisa Ketchum, myself, and we have some other staff when we were looking at Marauder Road and trying to figure out what to do with that Marauder Road. And I know that there's property in behind, and eventually Alameda is probably going to become a street at some point. But to tell people that, hey, you should buy a lot in behind and move your house is, it's something I don't think I think that's really kind of up to them to make that decision, not me. So what we have done is we continually maintain that rock slope protection and have repaved the road a number of times. And I've also told the residents there that we're doing that as long as we can, but as the ocean continues to rise, if it overtops that at some point, maybe the government's going to come along and help and build a seawall, but maybe not, because essentially you're asking other taxpayers to protect private property. So I think they are not happy with that necessarily, but they recognize that we're going to keep protecting it in that particular manner as long as we can. There was a proposal at one point, and I think Dave and Lisa were there when they talked about a sheet pile wall. I don't think we could ever get that approved, because the sheet pile, you end up with the waves hit it, they bounce back off with the same amount of energy. And at least with the RSP, it kind of dampens the wave energy to some extent. But in any case, my preference is to fix the Medio Bridge in its current location for a couple of reasons. One, because it's a lot easier for me, is that, yeah, maybe it only lasts 20 to 40 years, but I think we can get it done within a year. I think it does protect some of the properties. And I think in the long run, I think, it really kind of saves us from having to do a much more expensive and much more extensive look for an additional site. So, I sort of recognize that we all recognize sea level rise here, and eventually, we don't exactly know when it happens, but at some point, maybe we end up making a road on Alameda. On the other hand, maybe, who knows? Maybe there are some other engineering system that can save that Marauder Road and some of those properties as well. But the other thing is that, so in any case, it's going to the Coastal Commission. I'm not really sure what the status of that is. But if it fails, if, for example, the Coastal Commission says, no, you have to build in another location, what I would ask the MCC is for you to take responsibility for the public outreach. Now, I wouldn't say you should do it on your own. What I would make sure that the county supplied you with whatever you need in terms of financing. In other words, if you had to get a firm to do the public outreach for you and bring it to you, I'd be willing to get the county to finance that and assign a staff person to work with you. But I just feel like I don't really have enough time left in office. And plus, I think you guys are really closer to it than I am. So that's an option for you. It is kind of a way in which the jurisdictions are, kind of bifurcated there, is that Half Moon Bay, the city of Half Moon Bay has some properties and the county has some properties. And, ultimately, it seems to me probably the easiest thing is for the city to incorporate all more of that. Of course, they're not going to do it until such time as that particular thing is fixed, and I certainly don't blame them. So then the next thing we do have is we have created, I'm sure you're going to, at some point you can ask me questions about that. The next, we have a resiliency district, as you know, we just created. And there are 7 people on it, 5 city council people and 2 supervisors. The 2 supervisors, Dave Pine and myself, and that resiliency district will always have the coast-side supervisor. Debbie Ruddock from Half Moon Bay is on it as well. And the goal of the resiliency district is twofold. First of all, it's sea level rise, and it's going to focus on the bay side where we have billions of dollars of property, and the coast side. And that's one of the reasons that Councilwoman Ruddock is on it and I'm on it, is to make sure that we have something like 40 miles of coastline, and we want to make sure that if there's any kind of a revenue issue or revenue measure in the future, that we want to make sure that the coast side is covered in that new resiliency district. So I'm guessing the resiliency district was funded essentially by all the cities in the county. It's kind of a complicated formula, but we don't think the cities are going to be willing to continue doing, piecemeal revenue to the, in fact, I think it's only guaranteed for 3 years. So I believe that there will be a measure, property tax measure, to finance the continuing operations of the resiliency district, and at the same time merging that with fire prevention or fire reduction. That is essentially all the major highlights of the coast side. Up it from, you got it always from Pescadero to Devil's Slide.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. That was really informative. I think the way we'll do this is we'll go around and ask, we won't go around the council, but anyone on the council or anyone from the public who wants to ask questions, can just go ahead and raise their hand. And the way to do that depends on the version of Zoom that you have, but for the latest version, there's a button with a smiley face at the bottom that says reactions. You tap on that, and then right above that, there's a raise hand tool. If you don't find it there, it could also be in your participants list, or if you're on mobile, it's under the More tab at the bottom. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's go with Claire first.
Don, I was wondering about the county budget coming up over the next year or two. There's tech firms that are leaving, which I'm sure is a tax hit. There's COVID expenses, and of course, there's the general business loss of revenue. So how much of a hit do you think we're looking at?
Well, the county manager said it's about 100 million. But that was before, at the very beginning of the pandemic. One of the things that the county has done, and well, obviously this is a pretty wealthy county. If we, our property tax was going up 6 to 7% annually when our costs were in a neighborhood of about 3%. So we're actually in a pretty good position to withstand the collapsing economy, the pandemic. And what we've noticed is that property values are continuing to go up. So I'm pretty optimistic that we will recover pretty fast. So we're not, the anticipated, what our biggest loss really would be a sales tax. And I don't mean sales tax in terms of local grocery stores. Most of the county sales tax really comes from the airport. And the airport usually has about 50 million people a year going through it. And it's down to about 4 million. So that's going to be a big hit in the airport. The other thing, we get to have a big tax on the rental cars, and that usually brings in 10 or 15 million. That'll be down to, maybe one. Maybe so we're in a neighborhood, we will lose significant sales tax, but the county has significant reserves. And so I think we'll be able to weather this pretty well.
Great. Dan?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Don.
Morning.
Hey, I've for a long time I've been, really interested in the erosion problem we have on our coast, and with the new issue with the bridge, which, man, I really want to see that back again. I use that trail, California Trail, on my beach cruiser all the time, and it's just such a beautiful path for everybody, everybody's use. So yeah, that really elevated my interest in the whole erosion issue. And as I've said over a lot of past meetings regarding some of the stuff they've been doing up in Pacifica, and that they've been learning around their shotcrete, this and that. So I did a lot of research on the whole, different styles of armoring, this and that. I came across this item called a sand saver. They're made in Ohio. Essentially, it's a lot like a shape of a K-rail. It's a unit that's 5 feet wide, 5 feet in depth, and 3 feet tall. And it's got holes going through them. So when you line it up, you line them up facing the wave. On the wave side of this, the hole is very large. On the land side, it's very narrow. So when the wave action hits this, it accelerates the mixture of water and sand and spits it out like a fire hose up. And eventually, as the water recedes, it reverses the action, slows it down, gives the sand time to settle. And there's been positive, it's been working in some areas. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. I did talk to the owners over there. They're so confident that it will work. They're actually willing to, on an experimental basis, they're willing to provide these units if there's a partnering with county or whatever organization that could set them and probably provide concrete into their plastic units that some designed for, like 100-year half-life or something. This does not degrade. And essentially, where would we use these? My first thought is, wow, it'd be great to incorporate it with the bridge, area to kind of essentially collect sand right there, because it's known, Don, that sand is the premier solution to protect the erosion. But if that is not the location, maybe a small, yes, it is acknowledged that there will be short-term undesirables for having a small barrier that would eventually sink into the ground because the sand would rise. There would be short-term undesirables, no doubt about that. But if it could save the sand, there would be long-term benefits. So
thanks, Dan. It's been 3 minutes, so let's let Supervisor Horsley respond, because I saw him nodding. Maybe he's already aware of this product.
Yeah, I am aware of things like that, and we have looked at them. But if you could send me the specific information you have, I will send it to our engineers, and I'll have them get back to you. And in fact, I still owe you like a trip out to the Fourth.
Bridge. Yeah,
I have not forgotten about that. Hey, but I forgot about when somebody asked about, we talked about sand. We are going to enter into a cooperative agreement with the Harbor District, the RCD, the Resiliency District on a sand migration, but we're looking really at Princeton. So, there have been other projects, actually a federal one, the Army Corps of Engineers did a littoral study that goes from, in fact, I think some of the MCC board members may have gone to it as well, that tracks sand from San Francisco Bay all the ways around and how it gets stopped at the harbor. And hopefully somebody will ask me about the parallel trail. I'll tell you an update on that. So, but thanks, Dan. I think that those kinds of structures are potential.
Thank you.
Well, great. Do you want to go ahead and give an update on the parallel trail now? I'll ask.
I could, yes. As you know, we've been working on this thing for, I think, I started with, my first aid was Nicholas Calderon, then it went to Ellie Dahlman, now it's with Bray Hunter. So it's taken basically generations of aides working on it. It's now, it cost way more than I thought. We ended up with, we have a bridge over part of a little creek area, and when we originally dug the footings, we found out that the sewer pipe was where it wasn't supposed to be, so it ended up costing more than the Caltrans required, that the footings had to be enough to withstand a major earthquake. In essence, I felt like I'm building a Golden Gate Bridge. Currently, we're almost there. We got all the money. We actually got a grant from the counties, what's called the City County Association Governments grant for about $400,000. I was able to sit on that and vote for my own project, which is pretty cool. But now we have to get an encroachment permit from the school district, and Caltrans won't give us an encroachment permit until such time as we advise the school district that they are entitled to a financial compensation for giving us an encroachment permit on property that leads right up to their school. So we're contacting the school district and asking them if they would be willing to grant the easement without going through, essentially, if you wanted to figure out the cost of it, you'd have to do, an extensive study, and that would delay the project. So hopefully that they will agree. If not, we could cut off that link. And then we also have to do a lead study in the soil. So that is, we have to go back to the engineers who were doing the engineering on this project and ask them to do a lead mitigation plan. And then there has to be a tree mitigation plan. And we are hopeful that we can get that done fairly short period of time. It will, of course, cost more money. I'll have to go back to the board for it, but I'm really pushing to get it built this summer.
Wow, that would be great. Thanks. Okay, Jill, did you have a question?
Thank you, Superintendent Superintendent Horsley. I am very appreciative of this long, detailed list you just gave. And sorry, I wonder if you would be willing to share your notes with the council.
I would, they're not typed or anything, they're just my
I
handwriting.
don't care.
Yeah,
I don't care. You can take a picture of them.
I'll do that.
Thank you.
This is being recorded.
It's true, but I don't want to have to go through it and retype his notes. It's much easier if he just takes a picture and sends it.
I'll do that.
And Len should, who's our secretary, should have been taking notes as well. And I was taking some notes too. Let's go on to Greg.
So Don, I know you are our advocate out here, and you know this area for decades. And I know you know about the fire risk and the removal of eucalyptus trees. You've spoken about that, quite knowledgeably, and your work with RCD. I just wanted to make a point and then ask a question or have a request. Something like 56 residents and I worked together on a letter that I sent the Board of Supervisors. I think it was October 13th, 12th, 13th. You had a meeting that you created. You took the initiative, and I think Dan Canepa maybe helped you. And you had the supervisors together, and we talked about the wildfire risk. and I had sent about a 7-page letter. And I've been asking poor Lena to give us updates on what's going on to pull together the fragmented multi-agency, soup that's required to deal with disaster preparedness as a whole, not just the wildfire, not just the fuel reduction. And I made some recommendations, including put somebody in charge. And again, I've been asking Lena to provide reports, and what I can remember, and of course I'm new here, so maybe I'm not looking in the right places. I know in San Diego they've done this. They've removed the eucalyptus trees. There's some great stories about women in these red jumpsuits with what do they call them? Chainsaws, buzzsaws out there, helping get rid of the biomass. It wasn't a short-term project, but it wasn't 8 years either. And I don't know where they got their funding, et cetera, but I know it's been done in San Diego, and I shared those links and I can share them again. So my question is, where do we stand, and how do we find out where we stand? And why can't we get a periodic report on, here's the task list, beginning, like you said, the risk assessment by the Parks Department of fuel reduction. But, I don't know enough. That may not be everything we need, because some of the properties like the Route 92 and Route 1 evacuation routes for us are flanked with eucalyptus trees, which in the wrong kind of fire could fall over and block evacuation. So I don't know if parks is enough. So, given that you're trying to push this, the only two things I've heard that have happened are that you and Dave formed a subcommittee. And I appreciate you, again, following up on your own initiative. And then secondly, what was just mentioned at the last meeting, and you brought it up again today, is that apparently Parks is trying to prioritize things. But it just seems to me that in a first world county with a major risk, and, just where I sit, I got residents saying, why am I paying taxes to the county? I can't get fire insurance. My entire home can burn down. We're in danger of being killed. I mean, there's, I think, some justifiable concern. I don't mean to exaggerate it. So the question is, why can't we have a task list and a regular status report, even if there's been no action, but we at least see all the steps that are being taken to address the 7 pages of concerns we wrote the Board of Supervisors about, and who's the poor devil that we should turn to? It can't be Lena, and it shouldn't be you, because as you pointed out, you have a breadth of issues to handle. So there's my comment, question, whatever you want to call it.
No, that's a good, I think it's a good point. And I have been concerned about the eucalyptus for a long time. We don't really have a single person, but we are really relying on Nicholas Calderon, the director of our Parks Department, and Jonathan Cox. We do have They are working on an evacuation system. I know that's a high priority for people. And Nicholas is working on a report to the board. And I believe that the report's going to be coming up fairly shortly. And after that, I'd be happy to have him and myself come to the MCC and go through that list of priorities and let you know how we're going to fund it. It's kind of, I think that I think it's in a neighborhood of 28 million. I don't know that we're going to do it in
Right.
but
I had heard a figure from Kellex that it could take 60 million. And my thought was, well, Connect the Coast Side had 100 something million in it. I'd much rather get rid of the fuel than have Connect the Coast Side, you know?
yeah,
So,
no,
in terms of priorities, you know?
I think it's a very expensive, but it's not, I mean, if we were just talking about one area, like for example, Quarry Park, it's probably in the neighborhood of about, because I think it's about 400 acres. It's probably about 28, 30 million to get rid of all the eucalyptus. At the same time, you can't just take the trees there. You're gonna have to do some stabilization of the soil. I would prefer getting rid of the whole thing, but that's one of the things I think we're gonna end up, while the county budget's in pretty good shape, that's kind of a new thing. And that's one of the reasons we were thinking about having a parcel tax. It's not a permanent, but a parcel tax to actually deal with all that, not only in Half Moon Bay and coastside, but also in other parts of the county as well, because that's it. It goes always up to Millbrae in South San Francisco.
Alex mentioned that you can usually leverage, if you prove you're willing to pay something, you can usually leverage that money to get more grants, as RCD does all the time, and
Sure.
get more funding. So, I mean, we just need to see something regularly that tells us that our issues are listed,
Yeah.
and that somebody is assigned to figure out what to do. And, you know, I appreciate Nick is my racquetball buddy's cousin, my racquetball partner's
Really?
cousin. So
Yeah.
so great. It would be great, but you don't have to come here. Just have a website or send out a bi-weekly email or have Lena share it with us and show us what's going on, because I want to help you remove whatever the blood clots are, whether it's money or whatever, from the artery of progress.
Okay.
Can I just add something very quickly?
Sure.
Yes, you know, I think it was I that brought this whole thing up early on in August. So I wanted to just try to throw out there, I think that we should, before we start giving estimates of costs and all that, I think we should really have a session of talking about kind of out of the box ideas to really control the costs. Everybody wants to control the costs. There's a whole, the whole litany of different public funding that's needed across it. So, I think I know that up in Pacifica, some of these logs were used for river salmon. What do they call them? Bridges or whatever, so the salmon could jump up, make little pools. Anyway, I have not heard of I would like to have an opportunity to really kind of just throw out different ideas that could lower the cost and put these logs to use and just to minimize the cost. Look at before we take action.
I think for both Dan and Greg, I think we probably have to come back to the board, to the MCC with myself and with Nicholas and our fire guys, and delve into this more directly. First of all, eucalyptus trees have no economic value whatsoever. At one time they did. You used to be able to chip them up and send them to China. You can't do that anymore. They have no economic value. Putting them in, and there's so many of them, the cost of dragging in some places is probably more than, just more than it's worth. So I don't think they really have any economic value. I don't even know what you could do with them once you take the things down. You bury them somewhere, I guess.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's a big issue. And I think we I like that idea to have a future session. Potentially we
Yeah.
have a special study session or even a whole, the large
Yeah,
part of a meeting on that. I think it's important. It's one of our top issues, I'm sure, for this year. So
Yeah, even the issue about like evacuation. Remember the signage, we talked about signage, how they could help. I mean, having been a law enforcement, I think I know what I would do if I was had to evacuate people. I'd make it, the whole road would be a one-way road, and I'd move 3 cars down the road at a time. And I know how I would shut them off. That zone haven system, it's actually, I didn't invent it. Me and one of the other supervisors funded it because the fire department said, gee, we got this guy who's going to do this application. Turns out that it is way more robust than I anticipated. It has lots of information about, in every particular zone about all the vulnerabilities, has a detailed map of how you would shut down a road to make people, so that people don't come in and open up the road where they go out. So it actually is a pretty good tool, but it does need to be more robust. So we could talk about the zone haven system, how that works. Hopefully people are able to access. I have an access. I'm in a high fire area as well. I think, believe me, my neighbors, every time I walk in a neighborhood, ask me about it. So I'm interested in it as well. So yeah, we should have a study session for just.
let's do it.
One last thing, Don, is that it's clearly there's a lot of low hanging fruit, and I think that there should be some action on the easy stuff as soon as possible without delay.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page on that. Okay, great. It looks like Michelle Dragony, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a quick question. Why can't they get the wood chipping program? Why was that suspended over the holidays? It was going great gangbusters, and I know I was promoting it. And I had a lot of people, asking me, when there's going to be some more. Will there be some more soon?
Well, I'm sure it's still going. I just don't know. I don't have.
They suspended it for I don't know when. You can go to the wood chipping website, and they don't have any dates up at this point.
I'll have to get back.
Okay.
Well, I don't know.
Okay.
I know it was on the coast recently, but I don't know.
Yeah, it wasn't suspended. They just didn't schedule additional dates.
Okay, but not would that the residents were really into doing stuff for them. As Dan was saying, the low hanging fruit. They were happy to cut things down and get their landscapers to cut stuff down and then get it to the chippers. So maybe we can get that going sooner than later.
Lena's on the line. I'm going to have Lena check with RCD, and because I think they were managing it for us. I think she's still on.
I think she may have dropped off. I don't see her name there.
Oh, I don't see it. Yeah. Well, I'll remind myself. I'll put a note to myself there.
Yeah, it would be great to get a follow-up on that. Okay, I don't see any other questions right now. So
Wait.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, you went through the rest of the council, but you didn't get to me yet.
Oh, I was looking, sorry, for today, maybe I didn't make that clear. I want, instead of going through like council member by council member, since we have so much to get through, just go ahead and raise your hand.
Okay, nobody else raised their hand. You were calling on them.
Yeah, they did. That's what I was calling on, people who raised their hand. So go ahead, Dave.
Okay, I manage it. I didn't see any raised hands.
I raised and lowered them, but go ahead.
Okay. Anyway, so Dawn, a couple of things on Medio Bridge. I think it's been pretty clear, but I want to make sure that you are really clear that the current location issue for me and a number of other people is the armoring, not.
Yeah.
And the armoring is really quite extensive. So yeah, we'll keep working with you and DPW and everybody else on that. It's obviously a big issue. And just a quick administrative thing, not for Dawn, but for everybody else. The YouTube videos of these meetings are automatically closed captioned. So you can go to the YouTube video, turn on closed captioning and watch the captioning. And there's web-based tools out there that will download the entire closed caption for you. So if you really want to get a transcript of the meeting, that it's automated, so it's not perfect, you can always get that from the video itself. So yeah, that was
Good
it.
to know. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else?
If I was going to respond to a little bit to Dave and I
Yeah.
and Lisa looked at that. We're probably the most familiar with that whole Medio Bridge, Marauder Road. I just think that my goal is I want to get that thing done before, because I only have 2 years left, and you probably already know that because I think some of the, at least one of the potential candidates has introduced himself. And the other project's going to take years, you know, because there's going to be a public review process. Then there has to be a decision on which way we're going to go through. Then there's going to have to be an EIR because you're going through riparian right-of-ways, and then you're going to have to do some geotech to figure out, you know, how to best locate that bridge. And then ultimately, you go through either First or Alameda. There's going to be some property that has to be purchased, and what, you know, my guess is it's going to be eminent domain. And if you look at how long it's taken us to do with that, and you know, it's, the county is slow anyway, but it's a 7 to 10 year project. So I would prefer getting there before I'm gone from the board. I prefer to get the project done. But yeah, I understand at some point it's gonna fail unless there's some dramatic way to preserve that coastline there, and maybe Dan's idea or something like that. We may well end up having to go through Alameda, or I know one of DPW's thoughts is that they would put the connection right alongside Highway 1, which I don't think is desirable.
Yeah, agreed. I'm just hoping there's a solution that does not involve as much armory.
Okay. We don't
Okay.
we don't always have to agree.
Yeah, as long as we can all work together. That's
That's
Yes,
right.
that's the important part.
That's the only thing. We don't have to agree. We just have to be able to work together.
Great. Well,
Um,
I think,
one thing I forgot to say is that there's a census every 10 years, as you know, and it requires us to now look at all the districts. I think my district has grown less than others, and I may end up picking up more territory on the Bay side. I might end up with more of Belmont, for example. I have only a little bit of Belmont. I might end up with more of Belmont. Not that that's critical to you, but some of you may have read a local gossip columnist in the Daily Journal indicating that the board should consider making the districts east to west so that more board members have parts of the coast. I think that would be, I don't think that would help the coast, having 3 board members who have little teeny pieces of it. Would probably Midcoast if you were consolidated with the city of Half Moon Bay. You know, so their goal really, most people really are concerned about land use. You know, you're dependent upon me, and I have one planning commissioner, and one planning commissioner has to deal with 5 or 4 others, one from Daly City, one from San Mateo, one from Redwood City, and one from South San Francisco. So, you know, if you were consolidated, your planning commission would be 5 people who live on the coast side. And because the coast side, because Half Moon Bay has district elections, you would probably end up with, you know, you probably end up like Montero probably end up with their own city council person. So would El Granada. And there's actually 13,000 people, I think 13,000 people on the unincorporated and 12,000 people in the city. So you would probably dominate the politics of the city. But, you know, I would also get rid of all the special districts too, because I think they bifurcate and are not a very efficient use of property tax. The only one I wouldn't get rid of would be the fire district, only because, you know, they have, you know, that's more complicated, but it really, for a city, not having to deal with the fire district is great because it's pretty costly.
Well, it's interesting to hear your perspective on that. Being relatively new to the coast, I know there is a lot of history that I'm not fully caught up
Well,
on in terms of that.
I know that right now there's a history because there's a dispute between the city and the special districts on the sewer line. If you ever go look at you got to look at the sewer plant that is run. It has 3 agencies that have one single plant, and that plant, in my opinion, at some point, it's going to have to be replaced, and that's going to be millions of dollars. And if they're fighting over who's going to pay for a force line, what's going to happen when you have to spend 20 million on a new treatment plant or upgrade that facility? So I don't think it makes any sense to have. I understand why you had special districts, because the county didn't pay attention to anything, and the city was really very small. And so that, you had to have water, you had to have sewer, you had to have these services. And so these little districts developed. They all used to have their own treatment plants, but they were forced at one point to have a single one because they were all inadequate. Well, and then the way in which it works, there's 2 votes from MWSD, 2 votes from Granada, and 4 votes from the city. So you have an impasse all the time.
Don, they weren't all inadequate. The Montara one was a 2-stage treatment plant. They were forced to combine because the regulations were changed for the Fitzgerald Marine Reserve and then extended so that the outfall that Montara was using was made illegal by changing in the boundaries. We were forced to connect to Half Moon Bay, and now Half Moon Bay doesn't want to pay for the infrastructure, the IPS that connects us, when we didn't want to join anyway.
Yeah, but
now I've only been in the county since '85. I've only been out here 10 years. But part of the reason we don't get along with Half Moon Bay is a litany of things people have told me about mismanagement and bad mistakes and costs and wasted money that Half Moon Bay has caused.
I get that. I mean, on the other hand, if you look at Half Moon Bay, like I said, there's 13,000 of you, 12,000 of them. You don't have to have 5 council. You can have 7 if you wanted, and you could be the dominant force. But that's up to you. I don't know.
I heard you. If we could work it out so that we would be properly represented,
That's right.
I'd certainly be willing to consider it.
That's right. And then you would have your land use issues would be dealt with by your planning commission of people who live in your community.
Something to think about for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I don't see any other questions. Last call for other questions. Okay, thank you, Supervisor Horsley. It's been great to have you here. We'd love to have you at more of our meetings, and we definitely should plan a meeting focused on emergency preparedness and fuel reduction.
Well, I miss not coming. I mean, sometimes.
All you have to do is log on.
I know when people, but I got lazy now because because of the pandemic and everything else at Zoom. But I really miss the people contact that we had before that. So
yeah.
I appreciate the work that MCC does, and over the years I think we've accomplished a lot on the coast side, and I've really enjoyed, and I hope to have my last 2 years to continue enjoying it.
Yeah.
All right, let's do that.
And one other thing is we definitely should agendize the idea of us doing the Media Bridge outreach.
Yeah.
We appreciate that offer, Don.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sounds good. Thank you. So that's that section. We're on to section 2. We're running about 20 minutes late, but I expect this to be pretty quick. This is public comment and announcements on things not on the agenda. Again, I'll just ask anyone to raise their hand if they have anything that they would like to say or announce. No? Okay, 10 minutes back. So next section is part 3, council member opening comments. This is going to be a roundtable of everyone on the council going around. You'll have 5 minutes, and I'm going to stick pretty strictly to the time limit per council member to share really what are your goals for 2021. What do you think the priorities of the council should be, and yeah, what do you want to see us accomplish? So I will go around. I was going to start in the same order that I did for the initial introductions, which was starting with Greg. I know Greg has a document that he wants to share. I can go ahead and pull that up on my screen if that works for you, Greg.
Sure.
Okay, so we'll go
I question having the new guy be first, given that the other people, may have superior context.
I'm open to switching the order. Does anyone want to volunteer to go first?
Go for it, Greg. You've got a lot of thoughts.
What? Yeah, I got a lot of thoughts.
Go for it.
This gets me in trouble. Okay, are you going to put it up?
Okay,
Michelle?
I'm going to put it up right now, along with a time limit, so that we can keep track. Let's see. That's yours. Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll scroll when you need me to.
5 minutes is not going to be enough to discuss these issues in detail. So I'm only trying to point to issues that I think are important.
Okay.
I think I've said this before. I've talked to the woman who runs BOSQA and several other general managers of water districts in the county and in Santa Clara. There is the threat of a 56 to 68% cutback in the water supply from Hetch Hetchy. And the documents that I saw from CCWD show that it's 85% on Denniston Creek and the local aquifers. So if that plan cannot be worked out, and or if we do have a serious drought, the cutbacks are going to be incredible, not just significant, they're going to be incredible. And so my concern is about water supply. Part of our constituents are served by CCWD. And then we also have the risk of being on a single mountain aquifer here. And the flows in that aquifer are already diminishing. The last time it was a 4-year drought. If we got a 7-year drought, I think we have a serious question up here in Montana and Moss Beach. We've already talked about the sewer failing. It needs to be moved. Sam is now beginning a committee to address that. They haven't yet allowed me or anybody else to join. I am surprised the MCC has not written a letter or commented on this lawsuit. It's costing us all money. To me, it is totally invalid. It stems from Half Moon Bay getting itself into financial trouble and looking to save costs by having us pay for stuff. I don't know what more to say about PG&E right now, but I think we have an issue there. We're going to have an issue with the new projects joining us, and those new projects not paying the full cost of the infrastructure they join. To take Big Wave as an example, the county did a good job of tallying up the upfront costs of that project, but it's an example of what I'm talking about. That 1.6 million is a down payment up front. And I wrote the general manager of the county, the controller in the planning department, and I got an answer 2 weeks later from the county council. And the reason is because he knows how serious this issue is. The county does not include the ongoing perpetual costs of a piece of infrastructure and charge it to the developers. So all the traffic controls and trails and bridges and stuff that Big Wave is going to require, and the pipe from Montana Water District, et cetera, they may get upfront compensation, but the existing residents are burdened long-term by all the rest of those costs. And the county does not analyze, and they've said this in writing, the perpetual costs. So for me, that's an issue. I think we could scroll down. Michelle, we've already talked about disaster preparedness. My concern there is that we have a fragmented governance, in contrast to the state of Vermont or Switzerland, where I've interviewed people, or Nordic countries in Scandinavia, where they have a much more regional governance without all this fragmentation. So in a way, Don's point holds true, but just taking the Medio Bridge, Half Moon Bay has the south end of that. The county seems to have the immediate creek area. And then just north of it, the Marauder Road, Dakota Road is another agency. So we have a fragmented governance situation. And in the case of this disaster preparedness, you know, it's been August since Dan raised the issue of fire. My memo in October 12th, give or take. And we don't have the beginnings of a plan. We don't have a task list, and we don't get written status reports. So that's a concern, regardless of what the progress rate is. At least we don't have a visible progress with visible process. In terms of governance, you all have been on the MCC much longer than I have. And some of the issues I'm talking about may be seen as out of bounds. So my question would be, if it's not the MCC that's going to look into influencing or overseeing these things, then who is? It seems like it's us. So whether we're talking about a lawsuit that we haven't commented on that we ought to weigh in on, or the disaster preparedness, you know, what are we going to do about it? And if it's too much work, and some of us are of a certain age, maybe we should have volunteers serve as our voluntary staff and help us research things. There are a lot of very motivated people here, and maybe by dragging them in, we could help build a succession plan for those of us who aren't going to last very long. Time is up, it says.
Yeah, and I think, thank you for that. You have obviously a very long list, and I think in our next section on priorities, we will try to basically take what everyone has mentioned as their top issues and put them together and create an list of priorities for the whole council for the year. So you'll have the opportunity to weigh in on anything else that you think is missing in that section. Great. Okay, so let's go on next to Jill. Jill, are you ready to go?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So
you.
I'm reading from notes. So since this is my first year as an elected officer of the Midcoast Community Council, my main goal is to learn as much as I can about the umbrella of local operating and support of the San Mateo Board of Supervisors, so I can better understand current issues and potential solutions and best represent the views of the Midcoast residents. Okay, with that said, I have 3 top priorities. Number 1, I've been hearing from residents about safe routes to school. And as a mom of a 16-year-old daughter who rides her bike or walks to Half Moon Bay High School from El Granada, she's been doing this all her life. I refuse to drive her to school. And it is very challenging for her to get to school. It is quite dangerous. So I want to understand the regulatory pathways in providing safe routes for our youth to get to school. I live very close to El Granada Elementary School in Wilkinson, and there's a 5-way intersection at Coronado, which is a disaster for a child to cross. I've seen kids on bikes, and I've seen parents with kids walking, and they are completely stressed out trying to get across that intersection. So recently I've had some residents talk to me about the fire station and the beautiful new crosswalk. And it is beautiful, but it's a little tiny segment, and it really shows, I mean, it's blinding that there's this little short segment of sidewalk, but no other sidewalks. So teachers and students can't get to the beach safely, and kids can't get to the schools. Okay, so moving on, the second priority of mine is emergency readiness, including fuel management and targeting the eucalyptus groves in Upper El Granada and Miramar. I'm very interested in this programmatic approach to streamline the permitting process that Superintendent Horsley spoke of. I think that's a great idea, and I'd love to be involved in that. I'm also interested in Dan's idea of thinking outside the box to lower costs. And I would also want to involve the community. That chipping program, we've got people who have their own landscapers, and we have contractors in our community who may be willing to help out. So I'd like to involve the community in the solution. Michelle, do I have a time countdown? Like,
Yeah, you have a little over 2 minutes left. I can share that so you see
oh, I'm
it.
talking too fast. Okay. So fuel management is a big concern of mine. And the third priority is an extension of the San Mateo County Midcoast Local Coastal Program, the LCP. So the 2013 document has a section, it's 8.18, and it states development should blend with and be subordinate to the environment and the character of the area we're located, and be as unobtrusive as possible and not detract from the natural open space or visual qualities of the area. So this section 8.18 also requires exterior lighting to be limited to a minimum necessary for safety. That's important. It's limited to safety. So all lighting, both exterior and interior, must be placed, designed, and shielded so as to confine direct rays to the parcel where the lighting is located. So I want to work with the county to develop a clear definition and standard that will apply to both commercial and residential development along the mid-coast, and with dark sky objectives in mind from the LCP. This is also a concern that I hear in El Granada. Residents, not just the fire station lighting, but there's also apartment buildings that have lighting on all night long. And homes nearby, the residents have informed me that it's very disturbing for them to have bright lights shining in their windows. And I don't know if you can see behind me, but I have a dark, type of curtain. And it's to block out all light. But I'm very lucky. All my neighbors have amber lighting, and we as a neighborhood got together and decided we're going to have amber lighting and we're not going to have lights on at night. So dark sky lighting is very important to me. And that's all. Thank you.
Perfect timing. 5 seconds left. So that was great. Thank you so much, Jill. Let's go on to Dan. Dan, are you ready?
Yeah, could you come back to me, please?
Okay. Dave, do you want to go ahead?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm going to be pretty brief. My priorities haven't really changed very much. The order's changed a little bit, maybe. Planning, particularly long-term planning, and really trying to get the planning department to work with us. It's been a huge struggle this last year, even to get referrals. I'm not sure why, but I've been trying to talk to Joe Claire about that, and I haven't gotten a response from him yet. I need to keep trying to get in touch with him. And code enforcement has been a huge problem. Even pre-COVID, code enforcement was really pretty much not being done out here. You wouldn't get responses. They wouldn't come out and look at things. And of course, with COVID, it's been even worse. So that's been a big issue. Parks is my other big priority. And in particular, protection of the parks. Staffing in the parks is clearly inadequate. The rangers are not able to cover the area of the parks we have. We got 2 new rangers for Tunitas Creek, but no more anywhere else. I've been trying to work with parks directors now ever since I got on the MCC, say, we're happy to support you to get more rangers. And for various reasons, none of them have wanted to propose that in the county budgets. And I know right now, county budget's super tight, but this is a long-term issue. And there's also been some significant confusion about which areas the county owns and patrols and which ones it has agreements on, particularly around Pillar Point. I've been working with the marine protection areas and the groups that are working with them. There's been a lot of problems with COVID. Everything's been oversubscribed. So, and it's good that people are getting out. It's bad that they're causing And then transportation is always on my list, but Len is spearheading that, so that's my third priority. I'm still very interested in it. That's it.
Great, short and sweet. Thank you. Dan, are you ready yet, or do you want us to go to someone else first?
Yeah, go to someone else, please.
Okay, we'll do Claire next, and then back to Dan, and then Len.
Michelle, is it easy for you to put that little countdown thing up on the screen?
Yeah, I can share my screen so you can see that.
Okay. Okay, well, before I started thinking about, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Before I started thinking about what my priorities are, I tried to think about what the MCC actually does and should do. And I broke it down into a few different ways of looking at it. I think one of the things we do, obviously, is respond to county concerns. Example of that would be the Connect the Coast Side or the Active Transport Committee or something like that. Another thing that we do is respond to community generated issues. An example of that is the pump track, which they came to us and we helped them with it. Another thing we do is build community cohesiveness and awareness. And that's, for examples of that would be like the newsletter or having the liaison with a Half Moon Bay, that kind of thing. All of these things obviously intersect with each other, but you can start thinking about them in various silos. And then the last thing I think we do is some sort of management of the MCC as itself, as an entity in itself. For example, making sure that we're communicating well with each other, making sure that we have a coherent direction that we're going in with various issues, clarifying to the community and to ourselves what the scope of our abilities are. For example, we are a relatively unfunded community volunteer group, and there are a lot of things that we will probably have a role in catalyzing other people's research and planning, because we can't do it all ourselves. And I do think that a lot of the community thinks that we have a lot more power than we have. Like with some people with the Medio Bridge are saying, you should change your mind and not authorize this, whatever. We don't authorize anything. And I think it's probably important to let people know what our role actually is as a basically a liaison among various parts of the community, including the county. So all those things considered, my priorities would probably fall into maybe 5 categories. The first is safety, which would include the emergency planning and management. It would include things like tsunami preparedness, although that's not a huge issue. It would include traffic safety. We've got all these crossings on Highway 1, including Surface Beach, which we've never really looked at very carefully, but which is a huge mess. So safety would be one thing. Development is an obvious ongoing issue, and there are big things pending that we need to stay on top of in terms of smart development. Health, we have done just a little bit with, and I'm not sure we want to do a lot with, but given that COVID is a major issue right now, and recovery is going to take some effort with vaccines and whatnot, we may want to see if we have a role to play in that area. Infrastructure, I think I actually agree with a lot of what Greg has to say. I do think that we have problems on the coast with cell service, electricity, phone service, water and sewer. I do think the fact that there's this ongoing problem with the lawsuit, we probably should have some sort of role in that. And then the last thing is environment in general, which would include parks, would include sea level rise. All of these are really big topics, and we're not going to be able to do everything we want to do with all of them. So I think it's important that we narrow down as much as we can what we actually do want to put our energies into. We can have a lot of influence, but not if we're scattershot about things, and also not if we're not united. So I don't know, that's basically what I have to say.
Great. I like the way that you've structured that. Yeah, a lot of important issues. So when we move to actually structuring our priorities, we can think about potentially organizing it the way that you've thought through it. Thank you. Okay, Dan, can we go to you now?
Okay, yes. So,
Perfect.
excuse me. One of the big things is traffic for me. It's always been, I use this road as all of us, I think most of us do on a regular basis, and we see things that work and don't work. So I'll continue to advocate for pedestrian underpasses. I will say, I'm very happy to say that I found a third operating underpass in Pacifica. We all know the one going underneath near the golf course. I reported a few months back about the one that's up on the top of the hill near Skyline, goes underneath the exit. And then there's another one. What is it? Fairmont, in between the Manor District, and then going up the hill towards Skyline. Just about in the middle of that windy area of Highway 1, there's an underpass. I recently walked through it. All of these underpasses are clean. I didn't see any problem. There's some, certainly maintenance, some growth. So anyway, and then, of course, I'm going to say it again and again. They're being built all over the country and all over the world because they work. They work. Relating to traffic is, the concept of, smart traffic lights versus roundabouts. I will agree with everybody. On a normal circumstance, when you have random approaches to a intersection, roundabouts are hands down the better way to go. We don't have that situation on Highway 1. We have a dominant flow. We'll talk more about that, but I'm absolutely an advocate for fairly programmed, smart traffic lights. If the traffic lights are programmed wrong and not to favor the dominant flow, we're not going to have good flow. Period. If it's favored to operate to help a new development, then that development is going to impact the overall flow of the dominant flow of Highway 1. I was looking with this erosion stuff. I was down in Carlsbad and on the Google Earth, and I came across something that I've been actually wanting to. I got an exact location of. It's essentially a turnaround. I think that's what we really need to look at when we have situations where traffic is just too darn heavy. It's unsafe to make a left turn crossing traffic. The logical thing to do would be to make a right turn, not crossing two lanes of traffic. Make a right turn, but now you got to turn around. So we need to look at. There's an example down in Carlsbad. I'll tell you more later of a simple turnaround, and we can talk about that. Also, certainly the fire issue. Start with the low hanging fruit. One of them is that culvert which people use on the coast side as a pedestrian underpass regularly. I've used it. I see people use it all the time. It's beautiful. Yes, you got to kind of bend your neck a little bit, but hey, it works. There's a eucalyptus tree growing right directly above one of these. You look at it closely, that culvert is cracking. This eucalyptus tree should be removed. It's right on the side of Highway 1. I want to keep talking about erosion, keeping the sand, proper planning for a small town rural community that we live in. And also, it's very important to me that we have a fair allowance of time for discussing the issues concerning the community at the MCC for both the community members and the council members. That's all I have.
Great, perfect timing. Okay, and I think then we'll go to Len and then I'll be last. Len, I know you have a document that you wanted to share, so I'll go ahead and put that up. Len, are you ready? You may be on mute.
There we go. Sorry.
Okay.
I have a document
For it.
that lists under major priorities, things that were, many of them were continuations from last year. All of them involved considerable amount of discussion and in many cases coming to particular decisions. In the case of one particular item, let's say the pump track, a particular project was initiated. That's also true from the previous year, the parallel trail. Both of those are projects that are intended to complete this year, but it still means staying fairly close just to make that happen. We have the crosswalk proposed by Caltrans, not proposed, but we've been communicated from Caltrans that they will install the Rfb Crosswalk at Virginia in Moss Beach, and that they want feedback to see if it's effective. So that's, again, a project coming forward. A lot of the discussions today have highlighted also larger issues of coordination, and those are all well taken, but that's a whole different area to go into. And if we want to actually look at that in some detail, besides just talking about it, we would probably need to have LAFCO come and talk to us about that area. That's where they have their governance. So having just highlighted all those, I think we're ready to move forward to look at the coming year, and in my comments there.
Okay, thank you so much. So I have a little bit, let me see where mine is. Okay, so I'll go ahead next. All right, so I wanted to, let me put up the timer for myself too. I wanted to organize my priorities in two different ways. One is just functional priorities, which are things that I want to make sure that we as a council are able to do this year. And then the next will be the actual policy priorities or topics. So in terms of functional priorities, I think one thing that I want to do as the chair of the council this year, and I want everyone to help with, is to really increase the community awareness of the council. So I think, you know, I still talk to people all the time that have no idea who the MCC is. You know, we are here to help support the community. And so I want to really help us be able to make our presence known in the community, to let people know that we're an organization that they can come to if they have any issues about anything on the Midcoast. And especially, I think this is especially important with the absence of in-person meetings. You know, we can't be physically out there in the community during COVID talking to people. So I think relying on some digital means to do that is going to be really important. I also, want to just explore ways for the council to be more effective in advocating for the wants and needs of the community. Like, what can we do differently? Can we hold more study sessions? Can we, you know, once the pandemic is over, can we be out there at more events? So just exploring that. And then I want to chair meetings in a way that allows for a full and free discussion, but also maintaining efficiency. So it's always this balance, right? We want to have efficient meetings. We don't want to be here all night on our Wednesday evening meetings, but we also all really want everyone to have a chance to say what they want to say. So you know, just figuring out ways to do that, you know, balancing the amount of time that people have with you know, using potentially other ways, like the chat function in Zoom has come to be pretty helpful. If someone wants to say something, a lot of times they're much more efficient saying it when they're able to type it rather than you know, potentially go on and on. And so those are my functional priorities. And then in terms of the actual policy priorities, and I think everyone highlighted this is by no means an exhaustive list. You know, I think together we've listed many things, and we'll add all of those to our priority list as a council as a whole. But for me, the things that I'm thinking about right now coming into this are finalizing Connect the Coast side, getting through that. We have the final draft And we'll talk about that more at our Wednesday meeting, but I really want to get through that, get that finalized so we can start actually implementing some of the improvements that have been suggested through that. I think emergency preparedness is really important to me. So helping prepare, especially with respect to wildfires. We talked a lot about the fuel reduction projects, so I want to keep really hammering on that and making progress there. Start to plan now for imminent sea level rise. So we all know that that's happening. And so what kind of things can we do now? We talked about Surfers Beach and Murata Road. There's a lot that needs to be done, I think, now, so that 10, 20 years from now, we're ready. Review all the planning projects and together with our bylaws, ensure that they preserve the rural small town character of the community. I think that's really important, something that we do now, but we'll continue to do. And then I think Claire touched on it, but post-pandemic recovery, I think part of it will be making sure that everyone has access to vaccines and we're able to get past the pandemic, but also I think we need to ensure that our public spaces can safely reopen. Something that we've all experienced in the last year has been just this flocking of people from around the Bay Area and beyond to the coast side. Yeah, it causes issues with traffic, public spaces. Some things have remained closed, others are open, but we don't really feel safe going there when there's so many people there. So I want to think about that and what we can potentially do to, I feel like the coast side has been discovered now with the pandemic. People are looking for where they can go to get outside, and everyone's flocked here. And I don't think we can expect that that's all going to stop once people are able to do things indoors again. So that's it for me. Great. Okay, so then going on to section 4, let me go back. Does anyone have any comments on this section, or are we good to move on? Sorry, let's see. Where's the Zoom?
Michelle?
Yeah.
I just got to drop off now. I just want to,
okay.
Your priority, so thanks. And I'm going to drop off. Have a great weekend. And Sunday, I get my first shot.
Good for you.
Yay.
Congratulations on that.
I have to go down to Palo Alto at 4:15 on Sunday. So there it is.
It'll be worth it.
It is working, and I think it'll get better. Our problem has been really the lack of product, basically, for more vaccinations. So, but it's moving, and I think it's going to get better with the new administration that breathes a sigh of relief. We put an American flag out front of the house. Just what a better day. And
Don, are you going through Sutter or what?
Pardon?
Are you going through Sutter or?
I'm through Sutter. My wife goes through Sanford. She's 70, so she'll get hers in February. But Sutter goes, you go online. Kaiser's, I think, is doing an online system, and if people who go to Sequoia Hospital or Dignity, we are going to do some mass vaccination with Dignity at the so if you're a member, you may get into that system. So,
Oh, good luck.
okay, thanks.
Thanks, Don.
See you guys.
Right, bye.
Bye.
Michelle?
Bye. Yes.
Michelle, can we take a quick 10-minute break or 5-minute? I need to kick a teenager out of bed.
Well, I plan to do the break at after this section, which would be in about an hour. If we want, we can do a quick 5-minute break right now. I do need to do it in an hour because I need to feed my baby. Do you want to? Does anyone want to take a 5-minute break now and then do another 10-minute one after the section?
I'm open either way.
Why don't we do that? Just a quick 5-minute break now. We'll come back at 10:45.
Okay, thank you.
Does that sound good? Yeah, no problem. Let me know if you guys are back by putting your video on.
Hi, Michelle.
Hey there.
I'm reloading my Zoom on my computer, so I'm on an iPad right now.
Oh, okay. Okay. Looks like we have almost everyone. Jill, are you there?
I am here.
Okay, good. Great. That was a good break, actually. I got some much needed coffee. Okay, so let's jump back in then. So we're at the beginning of section 4. And I just wanted to go through. Okay, let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so this section is the longest section where we will really structure and organize our priorities. But before we go through our priorities coming year, I want to just do a quick reminder of our organization's purpose for the bylaws, review the 2020 actions, and then we'll move into the discussion on priorities for 2021. So I'm going to read through this pretty quickly, but this was, I just want to frame this in terms of what our purpose is as a council. And so per the bylaws, there are 6 main purposes. First one is to provide the community with a more, yes,
Michelle,
yes,
you're sounding like you're underwater to me, and you were perfectly clear
Yeah, I agree.
before. Is anybody else?
Yes. She sounds underwater.
So we agree. She
Okay,
was
is this any
underwater.
better?
Okay.
Is this better?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's good. It was because I had only one headphone in. Forgot to put the second one in. Okay, great. So hopefully you heard what I said, but just want to go through the bylaws quickly. So I'll read through these. First one is to provide the community with a more effective means to express its views to the County of San Mateo and other governmental agencies on matters of concern to the community. 2 is to contribute to the community's awareness of issues of public import by providing a forum for discussions and sponsoring meetings, discussions, and other events which will contribute to the general welfare, knowledge, and awareness of the community regarding such issues. 3 is to seek to preserve the rural small town character of the area by protecting the existence of agricultural lands, commercial fishing activities, and the natural marine environment, supporting the retention of a greenbelt area around urban areas of the County of San Mateo, maintaining the coastal protections afforded by the County Local Coastal Plan and Measure A, and seeking to manage growth in a manner which is consistent with the present character of the area. 4 is to assist the community in developing and expressing a long-range vision of the community, which meets the goals of its residents for an improved quality of life, protection of the environment, and sound economic planning. 5 is to assist the many associations, organizations, ad hoc groups, and individuals of the community who seek to communicate with the County of San Mateo and other government agencies about matters of public interest and bringing issues before the community and in representing the community before such governmental bodies. And number 6 is to provide a vehicle for exploring the feasibility and merits of governmental organization alternatives, including but not limited to incorporation or annexation. So thought that last one was interesting, considering what Supervisor Horsley said, that was some part of the original purpose of the MCC. Next, I want to go through the 2020 year in review, which actually, since Len was the chair last year, I'm going to hand this section over to him and have him just review at a high level the first page of what we accomplished last year.
Okay. I'm had to switch over to an iPad right now. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So quickly, there's just, besides the specific meetings, I want to point out a few things on what happened last year. We opened the year with the expectation or expected priorities that you see there. We knew those were on board and coming up. Also at the beginning of the year, the San Mateo County brought in a consulting group, Common Knowledge, tended to augment outreach and orchestrate coordination, especially with our Cypress Point and Connect the Coast Side projects. On the very first month of the year, we had a pump track issue at Quarry Park, which commanded most of the meeting attention in January. Then moving forward, if you can scroll down, Michelle. It did not quite that far. Basically, by the time we had reached April, the COVID pandemic had broken out to the level that it began to disrupt and fully change our meetings. So we had to adopt a new operational style. We lost one meeting completely, and for 2 or 3 meetings, we were working to establish how to best use it. The outreach approach that Common Knowledge was working with, which was very active in person, really was no longer feasible, and it was replaced with a survey and a newsletter to a certain extent, things we wanted to do as well, and then go to full virtual meetings. If you have a report that was sent to all of you that goes on a meeting by meeting basis, what was happening in our primary agenda items, but if stay back up there, that's for later reading. But basically, if you looked at it, Cypress Point and Connect the Coast Side at the opening part of the year through mid-year really was taking up a large amount of our meeting time, not necessarily always with decisions, but with a lot of sharing of information. The county basically with virtual meetings tried to adapt to that, and we felt their first pass was not particularly well received from our perspective, but continued to take information in and work with them. Once wildfires began to occur by late summer, those were both a major distraction just operationally for the county. And then we had several meetings to inform us about issues there. The Quarry Park pump track continued, and we were following that. And toward the end of the year, we had the Marauder Road pedestrian bridge replacement come up and become a major issue, which carries into the beginning of the year. Caltrans also informed us that they wanted to try a crossing with flashing beacon lights, as has been mentioned, and indicated they have a firm plan to deploy that in March. So those are the things we know that came out of the year and led us coming into the year. So at that point, it's really, and I think the discussions we just had from Supervisor Horsley to all the council members really covered the gamut of things to come forth. But most of the things I've tried to list here are things that we'll probably have to deal with specifically in the early part of the year, either to get on track or to follow up, bring them to some conclusion. So that's my starting. Go ahead.
Okay,
Michelle.
Great, thank you. Okay, let me go back into this document. So here what I've done is listed those open items from 2020 and that should reflect everything that you had on your list. Then so what we've always done in the past has had like a framework in terms of priorities that mirrors what we have on the website. So we have on the website, I'm just copied and pasted the header here, but we have parks, planning, Highway 1, which I actually would like to propose that we rename as transportation, just because it's more broad than just Highway 1. Transportation, especially Connect the Coast Side, includes pedestrian and bicycle paths, not only along Highway 1, but outside of it as well. And then Public Works, which is an area that we haven't really had a lot of major topics in the last couple of years on, but that I know Greg has specific interest in, and we could potentially have some topics under that. And then Shoreline, which is also has been called Shoreline/Sustainability. I also propose we broaden that to sustainability and include, it's mostly issues around the shoreline, but I think we need a place to put in emergency preparedness, wildfire fuel reduction projects and things like that, and that could potentially be under sustainability. So what I wanted to do is go through each of these. Well, first, I guess, get input from the council on whether or not this is a good framework for looking at this. If, I know Claire mentioned a slightly different organization structure. do we want to continue with something that looks kind of like this, or do we want to, and then we can also have an other section, or does anyone want to suggest any alternate ways of looking at this? And go ahead and speak up. When I have my screen share, I can't see if anyone's raising their hand.
So what I would say is I agree with your redefinition. And if you need any space, if you need any more space on the menu line, contacts and archives could go underneath the submenu for MCC.
So can we not worry about the website? I actually think linking this to the website tabs is completely wrong.
Okay, well, I agree with her definition of the categories.
Okay, so we'll talk about the website later. And so, yeah, let's talk about the categories though. So
I think that parks it doesn't deserve its own separate category. I know it's important. I think I might broaden that out. I'm not sure exactly how to put it, but sort of like community development or quality of life or something like that. So it would include other things.
Recreation.
Yeah, recreation, education. I'm not sure what I would put instead of it, but it seems too narrow.
Isn't this one of the tasks, the website? Can we have some people on the form a committee and address it?
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
That's why I said let's divorce this
about
from the website. Forget the website with respect to this. Just talk about it in priorities.
Yes, there we go.
I personally believe parks belong on here. Historically, it has been a major focus of the MCC. Adding quality of life or something similar to that, and wording doesn't seem quite right, as another priority is great. Completely agree with Claire on that. But parks is still a major issue on the coast, and I do think it deserves its own priority line.
Okay, let's come back. So potentially quality of life as its own. I want to talk about that for a minute and just actually.
And Michelle, I want to clarify one thing. By numbering this, you weren't implying order. You were. So it's really a bullet list.
It should be a bulleted list. Yeah, I just for easy reference as I went through this, it was kind of easier to think about it by number, but
that's fine. I just want to make sure everybody was clear.
Yes, not a priority list here.
Michelle?
Yeah.
It seems that Dave, with your audio, there's some type of a high-pitched sound in the background.
I do hear that.
Yeah, I didn't know if I just wanted you to be aware of it, Dave. I mean, we can move forward. It's I don't think it should stall the meeting, but just wanted you to be aware of it so that if you could make any.
I'm deaf in the high frequencies. I can't hear it, so I don't know how to fix it.
How do you know it's Dave?
I believe it is Dave. Yeah,
because it goes away when he mutes.
Maybe Dave, you could stay muted when you're not talking.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing. So it does go away when I mute though.
Yes. Okay, so if we were to think about quality of life as its own, let's just kind of do this in reverse order to see if this would merit its own section. Claire, what kind of things did you think would fall under that?
That just kind of came out of my mouth. I don't necessarily like that title.
Okay.
Well, I do think that
recreation,
parks, recreation, management of visitor onslaught, community centers, community groups, helping facilitate liaison between various community groups. I might almost put community development rather than quality of life, but those are just thoughts.
The problem with the title community development is that's used as a synonym for planning in both Half Moon Bay and the county.
Yeah, so we shouldn't do that either.
That title.
The communications with the community.
Yeah.
We can think of a title.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's not focus too much on the title right now. But,
Yeah.
yeah, and then you had education on here also.
Yeah.
in your list.
Yeah. That's
And then
good.
the health stuff when we talked about COVID recovery and stuff could probably go under here too.
Yeah.
And might as well add homelessness underneath it.
Yeah. Okay. So the only question I have is with recreation, does that, if we have parks as its own separate thing, does recreation fall under here, or does that go together with parks?
It could go either way. Parks and Rec is a frequent committee.
Mhm.
So yeah, whichever way people want, doesn't matter to me.
Wouldn't
Okay.
beaches be an item like parks? Beaches and parks are both part of recreation? I don't know.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
Yeah, I would say put recreation under parks given the rest of this list, but that's just.
Okay, so let's I like that idea. Let's jump into parks. So what I was trying to do as we were going through, as everyone was going through their priorities, was add them to the different sections here, but I did not do that in a complete manner. It was too hard to do that while I was also sharing my screen. So I don't have everything that everyone listed. So I want to make sure I did get through pretty much everything that Supervisor Horsley listed. But under Parks and Recreation, we have the pump track. One thing I just briefly wanted to mention is we always had planned on doing a reopening celebration for Moss Beach Park, but then the county just went ahead and opened that when playgrounds reopened. I don't know if we have any interest in still holding some sort of event once we are able to again, but I just added that to this list as a potential option.
Yeah, so I was going to say, if you're going to list things like that, certainly the Quarry Park Master Plan belongs under here.
Okay. And do you know the status of that?
It's sort of on hold. I was
Okay.
just with that.
Okay. Anything else? I know, Dave, you mentioned like having more rangers in parks. How do you want to classify that as a priority here? Yeah, park staffing.
Yeah, I would park staffing or
Management.
park staffing / parks protection.
Mm-hmm. I know for me, a specific area of interest is the Fitzgerald Marine Reserve and the fact that it's continued to stay closed. At least not the bluffs part, but the beach and the tide pools have continued to stay closed throughout the pandemic. It's really one of the only beaches that's still closed. I think the only beach that I know about that's still closed. And so
there's debate about that. There's a number of people who believe that means that Ross Cove and Seal Cove are also closed.
Oh, well,
yeah,
people are actually
put FMR on here for sure.
Yeah. Okay. I think that covers parks. I'm looking at my list. I don't see anything else listed under that. Okay, let's move on to the second one, which is planning.
You want to put planning and zoning or because somebody mentioned that.
Planning issues. Let's see. Sorry. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. For some reason my headphones stopped working. Okay. So Cypress Point, we expect to be a priority, I think.
I was interested in Don's tentativeness when he talked about that.
Sorry, I didn't.
Maybe it's out of line to say it, but I was interested in the fact that Don sounded so tentative when he talked about Cypress Point, like if it ever gets built. What's that about?
I could
That was
volunteer a
interesting.
thought. I'll volunteer a thought here.
Yeah.
The asset foundation of Montera's water district and its share of SAM in 2019 dollars is somewhere between $125,000 and $150,000 per connection. Now, if new joiners are allowed to join the infrastructure without paying their share, their pro rata share, then that means the rest of us, as those assets need to be replenished, are going to end up covering their costs. But 71 units times 125,000 bucks will just give you a feel for the magnitude of the impact of that growth. Not to mention that the hydrants in that area are under pressurized. They're legal to code. They're okay for single family detached dwellings. But when a fourplex and duplex structure with 71 units densely packed comes in, there's going to be a need for more fire hydrant pressure, and there's going to be a need for more firefighting water storage than the entire district now has. And the ballpark number I heard was $2 to $3 million just to upgrade a loop of pipe to increase the pressure in that area of Moss Beach. That may be an inflated number, but you know. So did I give you a feel for the magnitude and the numbers that
Yeah.
will have on all of us if we end up having to pay for it?
I get, that's helpful. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, by the way, MWSD and the county and the fire department don't agree with those assessments. Those are Greg's assessments.
Okay, well, we don't need to go into that in more detail, but that was, you know, we'll definitely something we're going to talk about this year. Plan Princeton, I think that's pretty much on hold too. Does anyone know? I know the supervisor mentioned it.
It got briefly reactivated and then went quiet again. It's going to complete sooner or later. So it's low. It's very low priority at the moment, but it needs to stay on the list. It may not even be a 2021 priority. I would say put in parentheses if planning starts moving.
Yeah. And then next, I had fire station lighting, but I think given Jill's interest in just more lighting in general and dark sky compliant lighting, I want to broaden that to, you know, to just lighting in general, and fire station lighting would fall under that.
If you do that, you might really want to put planning and zoning up there,
Okay.
because that's more of a zoning issue, I think.
Yeah. Makes sense.
It's not a zoning issue. It's a code compliance issue.
Okay.
The zoning code already requires everything. It's
Okay.
just not getting enforced.
So maybe we'll just call it planning, zoning, and code compliance, or should we just keep it planning?
Well, there's stuff in
second.
the works about making a zoning district for the stuff the CDRC is pushing for commercial neighborhood stuff. So that's just put all three of them up there. That's good.
Okay.
I think
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dan.
I think that there needs to be something within the lighting, an ordinance, regarding kind of consistent color of lighting. It's one thing to have, for example, sometimes some of the residents have a spotlight, like a floodlight, blasting, straight out into the street, glaring, blinding cars as they're driving through. But the overall feel of the, community and having kind of a more of a warm color, consistent warm color, instead of having, sometimes they have these blue lights now that are, it's just obnoxious in my opinion. And So I think that there should be a work towards getting some ordinance regarding the color of the lighting that people put on the outside. Now, I understand that that might be hard to kind of move across all areas, but I think we should start and look at it and make some type of, see if we could get some type of incentive. I'm not sure yet, but
Yeah.
that's something.
I don't disagree with you, but is that really going to be a priority for 2021? Are we going to have one or two people working on it as one of their major priorities?
Well, it could come under lighting and then that could be further defined.
Yeah, I think
Maybe that's
lighting it encompasses all of that, what we're talking about. Jill mentioned safety oriented lighting, you know, she mentioned the color, and Dan also mentioned that as well. We know the fire station lighting is an issue. So I think we just call the topic lighting, and then, you know, what it's up to us what we bring forward.
Okay.
Okay, I would add on here something along the line of monitoring building and planning applications, and
Okay.
making sure that we stick with our maximum of X number of new units per year, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
I would also consider putting maybe putting Surface Beach on here, even though it's not in our jurisdiction. If that starts to move, we may have an opinion.
So would that be here, or would that be under sustainability
Well, I don't know. Good point.
or profit transportation? It kind of falls, it depends which aspect of Surfers Beach. Are you talking about
Let's not put it here because we're not doing any planning around that.
right? Okay. I think I'm looking back at the list. Does anyone think I missed anything in this section? Okay, let's move on. So next is transportation. So this is a big one. We know Connect the Coast Side is huge this year. Highway 1 pedestrian crossings, which encompasses everything from, I think, Graywell Cove potentially to pedestrian crosswalks or underpasses. And then we have roundabouts or signal, I think we can call it signalized intersections, roundabouts.
Parallel trail.
Oh yeah.
So, Michelle, in terms of categories here,
Yeah.
I believe we need to have sort of a larger span there. We have State Route 1 itself, that highway, in which Caltrans is a major player for us, and they've tried to be more active. We have access to State Route 1, which is a DPW function, and it's closely connected, but that's a separate connection for us. We have the internal roads that are the responsibility of DPW. And then we have two major trails, the Parallel Trail and the Coastal Trail. And where the Coastal Trail goes through a park, it's part of Parks, but the Parks doesn't take full ownership.
Yeah.
And really it becomes, both as it crosses a highway or goes on roads, transportation issue. So those are the major areas. And then we have to recognize that the planning department, the DPW department, and Caltrans itself are the three major agencies we work with on those things.
Planning, DPW, and Caltrans. Yeah, and I think under our task assignments, we should make sure we have liaisons to each of those. But I don't know that in terms of, I feel like each of these specific topics will involve working with one or more of those agencies.
Absolutely. So I don't think we can break it down into parts here, but it'll come up later.
Yeah.
The other thing is that the signalized intersections and roundabouts really are primarily a Caltrans issue, but because that's a major connection to the highway, it's DPW and Caltrans for the operational players. And because of Connect the Coast Side, the planning department has a role on that side. But when you move to more specific projects, DPW and Caltrans are very important to us.
Yeah. Yeah, and there are things that are missing here, which I wasn't quite sure how to incorporate, because out of Connect the Coast Side, there are so many recommendations that once that gets certified and we move forward, we'll start to move into individual recommendations of improvements. And it's hard to list all of those here. that being said, like, you know, I know there are a couple things that we've asked for specifically, or that we've talked about at least. You know, one of the things is Claire's mentioned a number of times the roadway up toward the tunnel between Montera and the tunnel, and putting some sort of safety rail. So we did get some K-rail added to the section where cars were going off the road. So potentially like safety north of Montera could be its own topic. I just don't know how detailed.
My feeling is, in trying to establish priorities, that for us in the Midcoast itself, it's really important to think of the 4 communities that are right on Highway 1, Miramar, El Granada, Moss Beach, and Montera, as each a separate group to deal with. Because when you talk about, let's say, a roundabout or an intersection signal, it's first something that community has. Everybody is also concerned about it at the overall level, but you're interacting there and with the roads that connect. And for what you mentioned, the 5th area is really the parklands, if you will, that contain the tunnel, you know, beaches and other things. And that's really have to recognize that as a 5th area, but we're the main agency to speak to that area. So I just refer to it as the, you know, we'll call it north of Montera.
Yeah, that's looking regionally. I just don't know that, you know, any of those individual regions rises to the level of something we want to put on our overall priorities. I am considering what Jill said about safe routes to school as an addition here, because, you know, that, I mean, that could encompass a lot of different things, like the parallel trail would benefit that, but what she specifically mentioned is crosswalks within El Granada. But as a broader project or priority, potentially safe routes to school could be something that we think about.
Yeah, put that down, because that came up as a problem with Cypress Point if that gets built, because there's no good safe route to Farallon View.
Yeah.
So it's the overall problem.
But
Yeah,
when
it's
my
something
point-
that I hear a lot from the community. They always bring it up.
My point when you go to discuss it is either you're talking about Montera, Moss Beach when you talk about Farallon View, or you're talking about Miramar and El Granada if you're talking about El Granada School. Those are each important areas, but they sort of have their own focus of projects in connection.
I think
as Jill pointed out, it's also getting to Half Moon Bay from middle school to high school.
so if we just put it in a big category, later on we can flesh it out and put the bullet points under them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. I don't think there's anything else here.
The general traffic safety, I don't know if we want to put that down or not, but what Len is talking about the interior roads, and there's so many blind intersections on the Midcoast. There's some, I just had a fender bender at California and Carlos where you could not see what was coming because of the cars that were parked. But now I'm really aware of so many intersections where you cannot see anything. So
and there's so many that have like no, I mean, driving in Montera, there are intersections that don't have stop signs or any sort of signs like from either direction. So, you know, you just rely on everyone driving that, knowing that they have to slow down and look for someone coming in from the other direction. But there's so many things like that, to your point. I don't know if we want to do.
Well, then you could change, you could add, you could replace a bunch of these with pedestrian and vehicle safety.
yeah.
I want to point out that this priority framework is so long, there's no way we're ever going to get to it in 2021.
Got it.
We're going way deep in details that should be, you know, separate meetings and subcommittees and all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah. Well,
I'd like to add something, please.
okay.
Yeah, thank you, Claire, for what you just brought up. I want to pigtail on that, you know, I've been witnessing, you know, a really more and more of just, I don't know how else to say it, but disrespectful traffic maneuvering, how visitors, and I guess I can't say that it's always visitors only, but with, with problems with traffic and the more people coming out of you, people more getting frustrated, and they're just behaving. We need to have more. We need to have the sheriff come in and talk about some measures that they can do. Talk about crazy illegal U-turns in the middle of Highway 1 around Graywell Cove, which I've witnessed. Speeding down Alhambra and El Granada when they're bypassing. I mean, it's really bad. And of course, all the the bypassing from the Waze apps, and it's definitely an issue we should be looking at for safety and just for
Yeah, I think the thing
quality
that
of life in the area.
the thing that doesn't neatly fit into any of these categories is safety, and not just pedestrian or even driver safety, but also just the thing that one of our community members brought up at the last meeting in terms of a lot more cars are getting broken into. The catalytic converters are getting stolen from Priuses, and we don't have great sheriff presence here. So communication, it's something I want to do at a future meeting is have, Sheriff Lopez come to one of our meetings and speak about that. In terms of priorities, it almost falls into like an other category, or I was just looking at the
You could put crime under the quality of life one.
Yeah.
Almost anywhere.
Yeah. So let's add that here. Crime and traffic safety, I guess. We can come back to that, but I agree. I think it's important. Let's go on to Public Works.
Just one more, and also onto the on the coastal trail safety issues. You got electric bicycles now. People are using those in a way that's just phenomenally unsafe and rude. They just flying down when passing pedestrians that they're a lot of time pedestrians on the coastal trail are like they're like deer. You do not, once they see you have no idea which way they're going to move. So people expect people to stay to the right, and then they pass on the left, but that's not very often not what happens. And so the speed limit, we just really got to look at, I guess that's the state. I don't know, the county. I think a lot of people will a lot of agencies will chime in, but it's certainly something I think that we should bring up.
Okay, let's keep that under coastal trail. I think it's important, but it's under there. Okay, so moving on to Public Works. A couple people have mentioned the sewer issue. And
Michelle, could we distinguish between Department of Public Works, which has a certain area of responsibilities directly to the county, and that's one avenue, and really these are utility districts that we're talking about, and it's almost a separate issue. One issue that Greg has wanted to raise is, do we really get involved in talking about that at all? And what framework? So I think we should distinguish between the Department of Public Works and the utility districts.
Well, maybe we should head it something like infrastructure or something, utility infrastructure.
Does that encompass it?
And I want to flag what Dave said, because he's right. The little overview I gave you comes from my own analysis. And why? Because the local public works agencies don't have their own financial management expertise to do it themselves. So we've got a question about, do we trust everybody who's in an agency to be doing their own job and a great job at it? Or do we actually have to watch what they're doing?
Mhm.
I can't hear you, Dave. You're muted, Dave.
Sorry, my fingers are not working as well as they should be. Yeah, I was going to say, really, in a lot of ways, what we're talking about is oversight and getting the agencies to work with each other, actually coordinate with each other. Let's say coordinate with each other.
Yeah.
And this is that whole issue of, combining districts has been talked about on the coast now for at least 30 years. It's continuing to be talked about. It's not going to go away. I honestly tend to agree with Supervisor Horsley, it'd be great, but the financial complexities are huge. It would probably take a change in state law to make it happen. But in any case, coordination between the various sewer and water and power agencies are the way to go. At least we have Peninsula Clean Energy now, that while they don't do the actual distribution, they obviously have a lot of clout with PG&E. So that's another potential new channel.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about that? Just sewer, water, and power agency oversight?
I don't like oversight. I would say, I thought, even though it was my word, somebody wants to suggest a different word, because oversight implies control and we don't have control. Greg, you got a suggestion?
Can I get back to you?
Yeah, okay, just, yeah, leave oversight for now, but it has that connotation that we probably don't want.
Right.
Why don't we use monitoring instead?
Perfect, thank you.
I don't think anything else falls under this infrastructure category. I mean, it was mentioned cell phone coverage.
Well, the Medio Creek Bridge clearly falls under this, even though it's part of the coastal trail.
Well, I had that under the next one, which is the sustainability.
Yeah.
Just so you know, there's been talk at the Montero Water and Sanitary District. They're gonna probably put up a cell tower with a vendor, which is going to improve our service. And they're also talking about internet, which I mean, I don't know, can they be in the internet business?
Not,
But I mean, I would love to see better cell and internet service out here.
Yeah, so yeah, I would say put communications under here for sure. And then you can put in parentheses, internet, phone,
Yeah.
or internet cell.
Okay.
There's probably a few others, but if you've got them in other places. The Medio Bridge, I'm not comfortable under sustainability, but I think it belongs here.
It's tough because it could be transportation. It could be
I know,
structure.
but it definitely doesn't belong under sustainability, in my opinion.
Well, I pretty much went by where it was on the website, I think.
And that's what I'm saying. The website has nothing to do with the way we view priorities. And if you start changing website tabs, you start breaking links. So we're probably not going to do that.
You could put armoring, erosion, that kind of thing under sustainability and move Medio Creek Bridge to infrastructure.
Yeah, that would be a good way to do it.
So armoring, so I guess it's like coastal erosion, right?
Yeah.
Call it that. Fuel reduction projects, I have that here. And then just more broadly, this one didn't fit neatly into any of the categories, but emergency preparedness. I mean, maybe that is better under a new category, communications. If we're thinking about, because fuel reduction is really, what can we physically do to change the landscape to reduce the risk of wildfires? Similarly, coastal erosion, reduces the risk of erosion. Emergency preparedness, in my mind, is more of a communications topic. That's like, what can we do? Get more people onto SMC alert. Have message boards. Things like that. What can we do in terms of communication? Zone haven is another good example. So I'm going to move that over to this category. So then back on sustainability. Is there anything we're missing here?
I do think
Water supply.
So was that, I guess water supply could go there, or under infrastructure.
And I don't know if you're aware of the problems that Sam is having. Somebody at Princeton seems to be dumping stuff in that's causing the sewers to fail, be able to process the effluent. So there's some capacity limit at Sam that's being broken. I don't know that's our issue, but it's happening.
To me, that would fall under like water agency monitoring.
Okay.
I almost think that armoring should be specifically called out, maybe under the same category as erosion, but it should be there because that's a major issue. Managed retreat, maybe. Because a lot of the things that we're talking about with parks and even with utilities and that kind of thing are going to be affected by the need for managed retreat.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that has to do with erosion, right?
Well,
but I guess
yeah,
it separately.
I think it's separate in that it's a much bigger topic. It's like the consequences of erosion. How are we going to deal with that?
True. Okay. Anything else? All right, let's move on to this new section. So, and then I also had this other, which I think that at least on my other COVID recovery and crime have both been put under here. And so the only things left are website upgrade and email newsletter, which we'll talk about under the communication section. So let's go through this again, just now that we've seen everything else.
Can I ask how COVID recovery is an MCC issue? I mean, obviously it affects all of us, but what's our role there?
We're not sure because it hasn't really started. It's something we should monitor.
Yeah, I think we could potentially get involved in terms of like vaccinations, making sure we could write a letter saying, requesting that Seton bring vaccines to Seton Coast side, and have like an initiative, or that the county could work with them to bring vaccinations to the community for people who can't go over the hill, something like that. I'm sure there are other things that we could potentially have input on. We're not going to manage it, but I think it's important for it to be on our radar.
I would respectfully disagree. I think that the other agency's gonna kind of make that happen, but that's just my opinion. I think we do have, like Dave said earlier, we got a lot of stuff.
We do.
I think that I agree that we don't need it, but if it does impact other areas, then we can draw it in.
Yeah, we're going to have to go back and eliminate some of these things as priorities, but I think still keeping them on our field of vision is probably a good thing in case something changes.
Areas of concern?
Yeah. Areas of potential involvement, whatever.
Yeah, I think that the hardest step of this, so we've listed out kind of everything, but how do we prioritize within our priorities list? And that's going to be hard to do. I don't know if that's something we're going to be able to do in this meeting. I actually asked for input from previous chairs on how we've done that in the past, how we've gotten from an overall list. Because when I look at, our priority list from 2019 is the last document that we have that really detailed out, we had pages and pages of things that we were concerned with. And that's what I'm pretty much creating here. But how do we get from something like this to what are our top issues that we're going to go on?
One thing you might want to think about doing, because this is kind of how it was modeled with the old list thing, is to just go back and put a check mark against things that we're already doing.
Okay.
And then, yeah, that would at least be a place to start.
Mm-hmm.
Another tactic I've seen when you have a long list is you ask for the volunteer who's willing to work on something. And when you get no volunteers, that tells you where you are.
Well, yeah, yeah, definitely. I expect that.
So Michelle?
Yeah.
There's a distinction I'd like to bring up here, and that in this area, there are different areas, often they may track to a county department or a function which we monitor. And there you need to have people who are attending to that agency or that issue. And that can take you in different places, but that's separate from specific projects that come forward that we have to speak to, where we have to organize our time and community process, typically around a particular project, whether that's in the planning phase or the CDP phase. So those are the different distinctions that you have to keep in mind, because one, all need support, but it's quite different depending on whether you want sustaining, monitoring, or a particular project.
So
And the case in point would be the Murata Road pedestrian bridge replacement. That's now a very specific project, which we have actions on as distinct from coastal armoring.
So I think that is part of the task assignments.
That's correct, but you have to keep it in mind as you're trying to figure out where to put resources. So it'll come up.
Yeah, I mean, my perspective is this is more of an exhaustive list, and as we go through the year, we will figure out like which of these things will come up, things will come to a head with certain ways that county's moving forward or things that people bring up, and we will obviously not get through all of these things this year, but we will prioritize things as they come up and as they become important throughout the year, and as we ask for members of the council to start to work on specific things. I don't know that we need to really get from here to here's our top 5 things for the year. I don't think we've really done that in the past. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm actually okay with this overall framework, and then having, having things come up as we go through the year. But totally open to input on that.
I'm open to that.
Okay. So as we go through this last item, is there any, to me, the liaison thing is actually more covered under task assignments. So I'd like to remove that here. I think this is pretty good other than that. Okay, and then on other, we'll go through, so communications, not cell phone communications, but communications in terms of between us and our community, and also between us and the county is a separate issue. And we'll talk about that under the communications session. I think that pretty much covers.
So wait. Website upgrade should not be a priority for 2021. We're too busy. And it is a huge, expensive issue.
Let's talk about that then. I mean, we have a whole section to talk about that. So I think we should consider, and that's what I wanted to talk about under communications, and maybe we come to a decision after we go through section 6 on whether that is a priority or not. So let's hold off on talking about that. I'll put question marks by those things, and then we'll decide.
Okay.
Michelle Dragony, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think the MCC website is completely adequate. I think it's great. I get all my information there. It's quick and easy. I mean, I'm a web person. I mean, you can pretty it up, but in terms of functionality and finding stuff, it's great. So that's just my vote.
Thank you. Let's talk about that more later.
Yeah, and for anybody who doesn't know, the issue is that we're 3 versions back on Squarespace, and they had no migration method even between the intermediate ones. So basically, you have to completely rebuild the website.
Yeah.
And all of the documents on it. And that's the biggest issue because the Squarespace 4 document structure was antique.
Okay, let's hold off on talking about that right now. So
I just want to say real quick. I agree with Michelle Dragony. That's all.
Okay, we're going to talk about that later. Okay, so we have a choice now. I was going to take a break now, but since we took an earlier break, let's go through the council task assignments. Then we'll take a break, and then we'll go through items 6, 7, and 8. Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so task assignments. Actually, Len is going to pull that up and share his screen.
Okay, I'm getting it up now. Hold on.
for screen sharing. So just for everyone who's new to the council, this is a document that we maintain and update each year. It identifies who is responsible for liaising with different other organizations, also kind of responsible people for main projects. So there may be some things that we need to add to this list, but when he shares it, you'll see more about what I'm talking about. And I think I sent out a blank draft of this to the council, posted on the website.
You didn't send it out to us, but it is on the website.
Oh yeah, sorry, send a link.
Okay. Okay, so I can share my screen now. Okay, so here we go.
So the committee assignments part probably needs to be updated.
Right. This is just a starting point that way, because we're going to talk about that here.
Yeah.
Let's skip committee assignments if we're going to go back and talk with it separately.
Yeah, I agree. Let's
Yeah,
start with task
agree.
assignments. Okay. So post office mail pickup, who's doing that currently? That's Claire, right?
Barbara and I are doing it, and Barbara's not here anymore. So it's just me, and there are issues I want to talk about around that.
Go ahead.
Basically, I think whoever's picking up the mail needs to be someone. Most of the mail is on planning, and we're trying to go away from paper mail about planning to email, but we still need to check it. So I think it should be somebody who's got a focus on planning and someone that goes to the Moss Beach post office, which means either Michelle or me, although I'm certainly welcome to somebody else doing it. The problem is that some mail comes in, like there's stuff here from the mayor of San Carlos to everybody who I think is probably going to run for supervisor.
Yeah,
And stuff like that I would normally bring to a meeting, and now I can't bring them to the meeting, and I'm not sure what to do with them. I think maybe we need to put mail at the office and people can go by and pick it up. Maybe I or whoever is picking up the mail should notify people that it's there. But it's a whole different thing now with COVID.
I'd suggest that Claire, since you and I are both the Moss Beach residents, that you and I share this responsibility, and I can scan anything that's meant to go to the whole community and send it out.
and most of it, like the stuff from the mayor of San Carlos, isn't worth scanning. It's really political material.
Yeah.
You can just notify people. We can do it under council activities, or it can just be mailed out to the council as is with received and no comment. That's well within the Brown Act.
Okay. Jill, did you have a comment?
Oh, I was going to offer to pick up and scan all the items because that's something I do for my work anyhow. So it'd be pretty easy for me to just do the MCC stuff on the side.
Well, I'm open to that. I don't have a good sense of like what type of items come, how much of it is planning.
I would say 60% is planning, 20% is trash, and 20% is financial. And I don't know if that adds up, but that's about it.
You got it.
I only have 2 keys, right?
I'm not sure how many keys we have. I have one. Barbara had one. I'm not sure what she did with it. She may have given it to me, but I'm not sure.
You can put me down as like an alternate if you go on vacation, or I can be backup because that's really easy for me to do.
Perfect. Okay, let's do that.
Michelle,
Yes.
I just wanted to add something that Claire said a little while ago. I agree in general, go away from paper planning documents to email documents, but I want to clearly state that I don't want to have a problem if I want to see a paper document of some development. For me, it's a heck of a lot easier to actually have a hard copy versus trying to kind of review something on a computer, digital file.
So planning is switching to a new system, and they probably won't even be doing paper anymore.
Well, I don't think that we should just accept that.
You have a
No,
print.
and we made a huge effort to get rid of all the paper in the office. So I don't think we want to go back to adding more.
I'm just saying, on a case-by-case basis, if we should not just let that option go. That's my point.
Well, let's not let it go, but it's going to be phased out.
Yeah, I don't
I
think.
don't like the name. I don't like phased out, but you know,
Mm.
in general, on normal circumstances, yes, but not phased out like it's going to be impossible. It's our job to be able to easily review documents.
Anyone
So
print documents? Let's move on.
Yeah. Okay.
Post paper agendas at the 3 post office and GCSD.
So that's been split in the
I'll
past.
just split
And,
that
and-
out.
and it's never been posted at GCSD except when we had our meetings there.
Yeah. So for me, I am fine doing it at Moss Beach and Montera, and then Len and Dave have been splitting the responsibility for El Granada.
I just want a clear statement of who's doing it at El Granada. I'm happy not to do it. I'm happy to do it, but I don't want it split.
Okay. Who wants
I'm
to?
happy to do it.
Okay, great. It's
Okay.
There you go.
And,
Len, open
and
up.
obviously anybody can ask for backup when they're out of town.
Yeah, I can either continue doing it in Montera or Greg could do it if he wants to. It's not too hard for me to just go to both of the Montera and Moss Beach.
I just need to understand the timing. I mean, I
Yeah.
live a block and a half from the post office.
So it's on Sundays. When I send out the agenda 3 days prior to our Wednesday meeting, it would just involve like Sunday evening, most likely going and posting that at the post office, taping it up. You want to take that on for Montera?
Well, yeah, I can do it.
Okay, great. Then I'll just do Moss Beach. Len will do El Granada. Len, why don't you, you don't have to do it right now, but let's just like split that definition out into 3 different rows. So it's very clear. Google agenda list and Half Moon Bay review.
What is the Google agenda list? Oh, you mean mailing it out? Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I think let's separate those things out. Because generally I think the chair sends it out to the agenda list.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then Half Moon Bay review. Dave, you've been doing that, right?
Yeah. I'm happy to keep doing it.
Website, I think that's probably,
So there's 2 parts to that. Lisa Ketchum is the website administrator,
yeah.
and I'm her backup. The other part is just generic postings, which all of us can do. And then the agenda posting, which is always, again, the chair.
Let's talk about that.
Well,
Communications.
I'll just mention that I have some skills, for better or worse, that include the technical ability to do websites.
That's great. And I want to talk about that more under communication. So let's hold off on that. And then same with Facebook and Nextdoor. So that was something, well, we can quickly do Facebook and Nextdoor. That's just posting the agendas to those.
So
I was doing
I'm
Dave's
trying
taking-
to abandon Facebook, and the main reason I'm still on Facebook is the Midcoast Community Council page, because I am I've been posting the agendas, and I'm a backup,
Yeah.
or whatever it's called. I really would like to get off that.
Just you personally or as a council?
No, I want to be off Facebook.
Okay.
period. So if I'm forced to be on it because of the MCC website, it's a bit of a pain.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to take that on, or if someone else wants to volunteer.
It's a very quiet web page, for better or worse.
It is. Yeah. I wish it were more active. Michelle, I'm gonna hold off. Let's, so this section of website and Facebook and Nextdoor, let's go back to that. Meeting room open, set up and close. That's,
So,
Not
so wait a minute, why do we want to go back to it?
we're gonna talk about it under the communication section.
But this is who has a very specific task assignment.
Sure. I mean, we can put,
So I'll stay with Nextdoor. You can put Half Moon Bay Review and Nextdoor if you want for me,
okay,
but I don't want to do the Facebook. So I would split the Facebook and Nextdoor lines. That's
okay.
what I was
I'll
trying
take
to say.
Facebook. And then Dave, you can do Nextdoor. I had some ideas around Nextdoor and,
Yeah,
I
and
wanna
we can definitely talk about that.
yeah.
And if somebody else wants to take it over, that's fine with me. But I'm happy to keep going.
Okay. Len, could you just split it out? Half Moon Bay Review, Nextdoor, and Facebook is 3 separate lines.
3 of them?
3 lines. Dave will take Half Moon Bay Review and Nextdoor, and then Facebook will be its own. Okay, meeting room open, setup, close. Once we get back to in-person meetings, I think that was generally Dan and Dave, right? Or who was
Yeah,
responsible?
it was Dan with me as a backup.
Okay. So let's keep that. I mean, I assume toward the end of the year, we will get back to in-person meetings. And then AV equipment, transport setup, that's also Dan, right?
Yeah.
Meeting binder and printed
So
material.
Dan, are you willing to keep doing that?
Should ask that.
You know the rule. If somebody isn't there when you nominate them, they're stuck with it.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate Dan doing it. He does a good job.
Yeah.
Put his name down and Dan, we're assigning a task to you. Are you still okay with continuing meeting room and AV once it starts again?
Yes,
Okay, great.
sorry about that. I mean, sorry I walked away for just a second.
Lynn, you just need to add a row for Facebook. Yeah. Okay, great. Meeting binder and printed materials. I think that's something Barbara was doing, right?
Yeah, but I'm not sure why.
I don't, yeah.
It's something that we have to have at the meetings. So it's a requirement for in-person meetings.
Yeah, it's having a hard copy of the agenda and, documents for
Okay.
the meeting.
Who wants to take that on since Barbara's not on the council anymore?
It's something we don't need to do until we're meeting in person, correct?
Yeah.
Jill, that'll be in the future, but you might be good for that.
You okay to take that on, Jill?
She's gone too, so put her name down.
All right.
Yeah, we can walk her through it.
No, I'm here. I know how to do it. And I
You
said
sure?
yes.
Oh, we
We
didn't
didn't
hear-
hear
Sorry,
Okay.
I was muted.
you. Okay.
Thank you for
Hey,
volunteering. for that.
Michelle,
Yeah.
on Facebook was you. Nextdoor was that Dave or you?
Dave's gonna continue with Nextdoor.
And Half Moon Bay Review also?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Okay, let's scroll down to the government bodies. So we have a bit of a fresh slate here because we didn't actually complete this document last year, so I'm not sure was the main,
So-
the main people.
So the first 4, I've been monitoring all 4. I'm happy to keep monitoring them.
I think you should have a second person there as well. I mean, you're doing a great job, but just another person.
Agreed. So just for the new people, this is just reviewing the agenda. You don't necessarily have to attend the meetings, but you need to be aware of the agendas when they come out. And then if there is an item of importance, ideally go to the meetings or find someone else who can go to the meeting, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And make sure.
Does this list go down longer? Where are the local utilities or agencies?
They're down there.
Coming up.
And
Okay.
the other part of this is if there's something that you believe the council as a whole should see, is mail out a copy of the agenda or a link to it with the item that you think is important.
All right, well, I'll be glad to volunteer for LAFCO because that overlaps what I'm watching Montero do. And I've got a couple of minor relationships with LAFCO staff. So reading the agenda is no problem. And I can do more than that.
I think it's good to have at least 2 people on each of these.
Yeah.
So can someone speak up to be a backup for the,
It's really not necessary, but if you want to, what I'm saying is, if there's somebody who wants to do it, then that's great. I don't think there's any need to have 2 people on any of these. We never worried about that in the past.
These are not that time consuming.
Airport Land Use Committee? Anyone?
Some of the
That-
new people want.
So wait, that's dead. That item should be removed. That's
Oh,
all over and done with.
all right. That makes it easy. And the RCD?
I could do it.
Yeah, I've been doing it. I'll keep doing it, but
Was
I'm happy to have somebody else.
Was that Claire who spoke up?
Yeah,
Dave
that was me.
Claire.
Did you also, Dave?
Yeah, and line 34 is a duplicate of 26.
Gotcha.
Yep, let's remove 34. How about, well, actually, what about line 32 too?
We got that's there twice, so take out 32.
Yeah,
It's down there 3 times.
it's so important.
Wait.
It is actually.
Okay,
So-
and then SMC Parks is on there twice too. So you can just delete lines 32, 34, and 35. Who wants to be Parks Commission representative?
I've been following it. I'm happy to keep following it.
Okay.
None of this means that nobody else can do it on their own. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm quite happy to have somebody else be the primary on any of these. I'm just saying.
Okay, let's put Dave's name by Parks. Someone else wanted?
So DPW is a bit of a problem because there's no agendas. They
So-
sort of come up as part of everything else.
So I've been active with roads with DPW, but that's just one part of it, but do that.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, put Len's name.
Okay, emergency services. Jill has taken on the KEEP meetings. I'm also interested in this as well.
Is it possible we also could involve other community members, for instance, Michelle or Barbara, just the way Chris Johnson has served as kind of a adjunct professor on the pump track? Is it possible to have community members be part of this?
They can be brought into it, but Chris came in a very particular and more formal way for that. So I don't know that.
This is really council members whose responsibility is. Those council members can talk to community members all they want.
community members can monitor anything they want, but we just want to make sure that internally we're getting everything.
Okay, Pillar Point Harbor. It's actually more broadly the Harbor District, right? But just,
Yeah.
It is, yeah, take out Pillar Point. It's just the Harbor District. Again, I've been monitoring it and I'm happy to let somebody else be primary.
Very important.
it is really important.
Jill, you're interested in the harbor, aren't you?
So I'll put myself down too.
I'm sorry,
Jill, would you like to volunteer for this as well?
the harbor.
Yeah.
I've attended a few of their meetings and I get kind of upset over them. So I don't think I'm a wise choice for this category.
Been there, done that.
All right. I imagine, Greg, you're volunteering for 38 Sewer Authority, right?
Yeah, I plan to attend as well as audit the agenda for Sam, for Montera, and if all I have to do is look at the agenda for CCWD, I'd be glad to do that also.
Yeah, do we
I
have
don't know how many
Montera?
meetings I could. Where's Montera Water District?
47. So I think.
Oh,
Greg,
yeah.
you're here for
Put me down for 40.
43 and 47.
Yeah,
Okay. SMC Sheriff,
44 also? No.
47.
47.
Well, GCSD is that's sewer, not you?
Yeah, we're not there yet. Let's
We
Put,
don't
put
know
Greg,
the-
I'll look at the agenda for GCSD, sure. If I don't, as long, I'm not promising to go to
Well,
4 sets of meetings, but I'll look at the
GSD
agenda.
is a mix. It's parks, which like tends to come under Dave a lot, but it's also sewer.
Yeah, but I've met Delia and I've met
The question is,
Barbara
do you wanna
Dye.
do-
I'm happy to do it.
Well, so
let's take volunteers for GCSD and Parks Advisory Committee right now. Greg, Dave,
Again, I'm following it, but I've been putting less energy into it. So if somebody else wants it, that's great.
Bill, or any other El Granada people want to put their names on this as well? Definitely put Greg
okay, I'll go.
and Lynn. Okay,
So who else?
Greg.
Greg? What about Dan? Did you still want to be there? Take that as a
Yeah,
no.
sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. SMC Sheriff Coastside Patrol. What's the history of that? I mean, they're not Are there meetings?
I
No,
don't think so.
this is the sheriff. Basically, they're the whole they're the whole coast side now, and typically we have somebody that Lisa's connected there some. But
Yeah, no, but there was some kind of community meeting at one point. There's not now.
I'll
We can erase that, take it out.
So I would just drop that.
Okay, we can
That
delete
hasn't- that
39
hasn't been-
then.
And the highway patrol, I would delete that. They don't have agendas.
Right, same thing.
Okay, so 39
Delete
report, delete. How about Coastside Fire Protection District? Volunteers?
well, so
They
under,
have,
under fire, I have a question here. So we have RCSD, I think, already, but they run a monthly meeting for Fire Safe out of Woodside, and that's that Sheena with RCUD is on it, and I guess I just want to make sure that that's a particular monthly meeting we should attend.
Add it to the list by all means.
I'm not sure what these values in column A signify, the A1, A2, E.
That's to help sort it, just group it around. So those are put together to do sorting when we're all done.
Okay, so this meeting that you're speaking of, where would that fall?
I think it would go along, it would be a specific meeting that happens monthly under the sponsorship of RCD, but I think it,
Yeah, it's a separate meeting, so just.
what's that, Dave? What did you say, Dave?
It's a completely separate meeting, so just.
Yeah,
put it
I
under
was
the-
gonna put it down as a different meeting.
fire safe, right?
Yes. I'll get more details on it.
Who's been going to those?
I started to attend,
Okay, you want to put your name down then?
but there, it seems actually, it's also something that Greg has made a lot of noise about.
And Dan.
Also, we,
The 3 of you guys take that on then.
But remember, this is just looking at agendas and letting us know if there's anything important.
Yeah,
well, my
and
my
when
thing
you
is-
say looking at agendas, I assume we get on the mailing list for each agency so
Exactly.
that we get.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Coastside Fire Protection District, do they have meetings?
I don't think so.
They do, they have regular.
Yes, they
meetings,
do.
and I get their agendas and occasionally I watch the meetings.
Okay, how about Dave and Dan then? Dan, you okay with that?
Well, a lot of these things have to do with disaster preparedness and fire. I mean, I hate to volunteer for everything, but I mean, if you're going to take a look at disaster preparedness, RCD, Fire Safe Monthly,
That's not
Coastside
what
Fire
this is.
Protection
This is
District.
Specific meetings and agendas. And
Yeah.
the meeting that Len just described was sort of part of what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think it's okay to have different people on the different meetings.
And anybody can do this, even if they're not on the list.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would like to volunteer for CUSD.
and I've been in touch there too, so
I know Jill also has a daughter in CUSD. Would you like to be on that as well?
Yes.
Scroll down. Half Moon Bay Airport. Anything happening with that?
That So these, yeah, 44 and 45 are more liaison things. They're not meetings.
No, I think 45 is definitely needed.
Yeah.
Do they have meetings?
But
Well,
if
no,
it's
this is a
not
contact we
meeting,
have working with them.
That would be more under something else.
yeah, it belongs somewhere,
Yes.
not in
We
this
can
category.
separate this out then.
I'll leave it there. We'll pick it up somewhere else, but just so it doesn't get lost.
Yeah,
Okay.
put move somewhere. in
Did we have anything for Half Moon Bay Airport or drop it? I lost that.
Drop it. There's no regular meetings.
Okay. All right, the Half Moon Bay City Council and Planning Commission, those are two separate meetings, right?
Yeah. and they
I
should-
monitor both of them. I think Dave does
yeah,
too.
They should be kept separate.
Let's separate those out. What about, like, as I know, Claire, you've spoken, given updates even for on the MCC at the city council meeting, right?
Right.
Is that typically the role of the chair, or can anyone do that?
Anybody can do that.
Do you want to continue to do that?
I would like to continue to do that. I think Len has backed me up a couple times.
Okay,
Yeah, that'd be a good thing for you to do, Michelle.
let's put the three of us then, Claire, Len, and myself.
But that's not reviewing the agenda. That's a separate thing.
But it's related. So,
Good touch point.
yeah.
Okay, no, this is Half Moon Bay Planning.
Planning Commission, I follow. Again, I'm happy if somebody else wants it.
I follow it as well.
Civic Council. Dan, can I volunteer you for that, since I know you've been looking at a lot of the roadways and underpasses in Pacifica? Would you be willing to follow that?
Pacific City Council.
Yeah,
Um,
just getting the
I
agenda.
don't know why it's on there.
Well, it's
Why is it
important.
on there? I mean,
The reason
Yeah, there-
it's on there is Pacifica is our neighbor to the north. And at various times, we've tried to build good relationships with them. I had it technically for 2 years. I completely fell down on the job.
Same here.
Well,
I think it's sort of.
I know people up there, like Dan Stegnick, Sherry Chan.
Do you
And
want to
they have
volunteer?
issues that are similar. Yeah, they have issues that are similar to us in terms of managed retreat controversy and development in places that are going to be flooded, So I don't mind. I can at least monitor the agenda, and I could probably do more if something comes up.
Okay, you can put me there as well. I'll follow the agenda. The Coastal Commission.
A lot of us track that. I've been tracking it. Happy to keep tracking.
I'd be happy to do it with Dave.
Okay,
So,
like Lynn, Dave, and Claire.
Yeah.
They have a big agenda, so having multiple people is good.
Yeah. And I'm not familiar with the.
The CCAG is where a lot of the money grants come from.
Okay,
It's one member from every city council and one member from the board of supervisors, which, as Don said, is him this year. I've tried to get on their agenda list multiple times and never been successful.
So when are the meetings for this? It's hard for me to volunteer to do something when I don't know the dates or times.
You don't have to go to the meeting.
Okay,
You just have to look at the agenda.
okay.
You
Whoever
know-
signs up for this should probably spend some effort trying to get on the agenda list, and if they
okay, I
can't,
put myself there.
and to Dawn and ask, or rather Lena, and ask how to get the agendas.
Okay, Lynn, thanks for taking that on.
Can I ask a question that is a little sideways here, but there are two other, I'll call them groups, that seem to have a fair impact on our lives, and that would be SAMCAR and ABAG. I don't know if you're aware of the Association of Bay Area Government.
Yeah, so
Anybody ever consider,
commercial is
What?
not something I would suggest we follow. But ABAG or MTC, either or both. I follow MTC somewhat. I don't follow ABAG.
what about Samcar?
That's commercial. That's realtors. I don't.
That's
think
my point.
we follow that.
Exactly my point. Where do you think the population pressure we're getting comes from?
I'm not saying no council member can follow it. I'm saying it's not a government agency, so it doesn't belong.
Right. Not a government agency.
How about Samtrans?
Technically, I was on the Samtrans list and I've fallen down on the job. So if somebody else wants it, that would be great. I do still get their agendas, but I'm barely looking at them.
I'll look at them if nobody else does.
Great.
Claire?
Do you want to be the official council liaison to them as well?
Sure, sounds great.
Okay, I will, the next email I get, I'll reply and say, please switch it to Claire.
Okay,
And I'll CC you on that.
okay.
Anything else we're missing here? We know we have to go back to the top.
I will point out we're running way behind schedule and I have a 1 p.m. hard stop.
Okay, I'm proposing that I was gonna take another break after this, but that we power through it and try to get finished with everything by 1 p.m.
Sounds good.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, so back at the very top, we had, even above that, committee assignments. I don't think any of these committees are necessarily relevant.
Well, the TAC is still very relevant.
Which one?
The Connect Coastside TAC.
Yeah,
Very relevant.
It's not clear whether it's active anymore, Dave, because they released this last version without a TAC meeting.
It's not clear what's going to happen, but we need to keep it on the list.
Well, so, I mean, I'm been on that.
Yeah, I think it's Len and I are the two that are officially on that list.
okay.
The next one, I was officially the person. I'm happy to keep doing it. As I say, it's been dead other than the pump track.
Okay,
And CDRC liaison applicant interviews, I think we can drop.
okay,
If anything comes up, it should be the chair.
okay.
Yeah, or it can be anybody on the council. But at this point, I think the CDRC is strong enough that we don't really need to do that unless Dawn asks us to.
Oh,
Dawn has occasionally asked our opinions in the past.
okay. So is this where the committee that for the last year was Michelle, Claire, and Dave would go?
Yeah.
What should we call it?
No, wait a minute. What are we talking about?
Well,
The planning review committee should go.
Oh,
Yeah, that should go here. So, I think with that, definitely, it sounds like Dave and Claire want to continue to be on that. I'm interested in it as well. Unless someone else wants to volunteer.
This one, there's a lot of communication.
Mhm.
So it really has to be no more than 3. So if anybody else really wants to be on this is the time to speak up and we'll decide.
Yeah. I want to talk just really briefly about the way that this works too. I did have a conversation with county council on this, and I think the important thing to note on this is that the 3 people on this committee are reviewing the planning projects that come forward, but everyone on the council has access to those projects. They're now being sent to the entire council. So anyone on the council can request that those projects be added to an agenda. So if you see something that you want to talk about in a meeting, let me know and I'll bring it, for either let me know or bring it up during one of our future agenda sections of our council meetings, and we'll bring it up. So everyone has the ability on the council to bring an item forward. And so this 3-person group will continue to review projects and speak basically on behalf of that group. knowing that that group is, sometimes decides to bring things to the full council if we hear from anyone, or if we think that it's something that everyone will be concerned about. A lot of times it's like little things like individual tree removals or an extension to a home, things like that. So on those things, oftentimes we have no comment, but I just wanted to point out that everyone is able to request that any of those items be added. And then the other thing I'll just mention is that we were keeping a document listing all of the projects. And I have failed in keeping that up to date. And so between Dave and I, we're going to get that up to date and continue to update that. And that's located on the website under planning. That's all I have on that.
And everybody should be getting copies of everything we send and everything we receive. So hopefully that's working.
Great. Okay, let's move on.
So Michelle?
Yes.
So I'll consider this draft complete. I'll go through the organization of it a bit and then we can send it out.
Yeah, let's you and I review it just to make sure we captured everything we spoke about, and then we'll send it out.
Okay.
Okay, if you would stop sharing, I'm going to share my screen now and go through. The next section is section 6, which is on communications. And I want to talk about that. We'll try to make this pretty quick. But we have a number of things that came up last year and things I want to continue to talk about in terms of communications. So email, website, and social media. Do you guys see my screen now?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. So I want to start first with email. So last year, a big project together with Common Knowledge, and then we took it on ourselves, was to produce a quarterly newsletter, and we came out with one edition of it. And quite frankly, it was a very tedious and time-consuming project. And it's hard to do this as a council with no staff. And we had some help from the supervisor's office. Carrie Dahlman was actually pretty instrumental in helping to draft this, but no one was really happy with the process or the outcome. However, I do think it's really important, especially in this pandemic situation, to improve our communication with members of the community. So I'm going to propose that we move forward on doing a quarterly newsletter. And I also talked to County Council about this to make sure that we're able to do it in a way that is both efficient and that involves everyone. So I'm going to present an idea, and then I want to hear feedback from the council. Okay, so the idea would be to go forward with a newsletter once a quarter. One meeting a quarter, we talk about it. So probably, coming up pretty quickly. Our last one went out in November. So really February we'd be due for our next one, but it's probably not going to be that quickly, but we'll talk about it at the topics that we want to put on that newsletter at one of our next couple meetings. We'll decide as a council on the topics that will go in the newsletter, and then we will assign members of the council to each put together one topic. So let's say we have 5 topics on the, winter 2021 newsletter. We will decide at the meeting who is going to be responsible for each topic. And each of those people will write a short summary of that topic to go in the newsletter. We need to choose an editor that will basically review only for like spelling, grammar, and formatting. They're not going to review the content. And then we need a technical person to basically set up the send using an email system.
So Michelle,
let me finish.
Somebody needs to review for content.
Okay, so yes. So the challenge on this is trying to fall into the follow rules under the Brown Act. It's tough to have an editor review for content. I'm not exactly sure on the reasons for that. I'm looking at my notes, but
it's incredibly clear you have to have that, because you can't have one person stating an opinion that becomes council's opinion.
Yeah,
Or puts us in legal trouble or
For
blah,
sure.
blah, blah,
for
blah.
sure. That's the thing I wanted to get to. Okay, so I think the articles that we will write for this newsletter are not opinion articles. There should be no opinion in that. That gets us into very, just sketchy areas in terms of legal. The purpose of this newsletter is to communicate what we're doing out to the council. So let's say the topic is on, you could have a topic about the retreat. And let's say I decide to write that. I will basically summarize what we talked about at the retreat and what we've aligned on in terms of our priorities. I would link to a document on our website that has that listed out. It's not me stating what my opinion on it is of what our priorities should be. It's this is what happened at a council meeting, and this is what we think is important as a council. That there should be, I know it's tricky because any issue has two sides. If we're going to talk about Medio Bridge, for example, I know we have different opinions. The newsletter is not talking about it's not leaning one way or the other, unless it's stating something that the council as a whole has already agreed on or voted on. So I want to make that very clear. The purpose of this newsletter is not to have any sort of opinion. We can't really, I know it's been brought up in the past, should we have guest editors or guest writers? We can't do that. Really, it's basically a communications tool to get people interested in what we're doing as a council, and just to engage with the community. So I think you're right, Dave, in terms of
if you've been following the City of Half Moon Bay mayor's newsletters, that's a good example of a clean, factual issues, accomplishments, etc., without opinion.
Agreed.
They have a staff though, right?
Yeah, that's the tricky part.
But you do.
Can I ask about the need? Can we revisit the need here?
No,
Because
that was a whole meeting.
Yeah.
we have to do this is what I'm hearing. We can't just make a post. We can't just post a page on our website, which has the material, or pages on our website, and then go put links out in Facebook, Nextdoor, and the Half Moon Bay Review. Tell people to go to the website.
The whole point was outreach to people.
Yes, I agree.
But the outreach,
Greg.
the outreach is dependent on having people sign up for the newsletter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with Greg. I think we're walking into just
And
a whole list of complications and lots of extra work
put
for
it
the
on
new
the
council.
agenda again. We
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's not discuss that here.
Yeah, I don't want to get into that.
Yeah.
I do have another, I want to continue on with this because I mean, this is one of my main initiatives for the year, and I know some people can disagree with me, but I think it's really important. I think also a piece of it is to make sure that we have, like you mentioned, we need signups. And this is something that I think we need to do is basically create a place on the website where people can sign up for the newsletter. I have actually an example of what Half Moon Bay does in terms of signing up for updates. So they have a place where people can sign up. Obviously their list, where did it go, is much more comprehensive than ours, but
So
basically
the county has such a list as well.
yeah.
We can just get
Dave?
council added to the.
Let her finish.
Yeah, let me just finish and then you can comment. So I think what we need to do, and this kind of goes into website, is have a place on our website where we can have people sign up to receive both of our agendas and our newsletter. I know right now the agendas are done through Google Groups, and I actually think that we should potentially move away from that and create a mailing list so we are building a list of people that we can communicate with, and that people can choose what they want to hear about, whether it's they want to hear about the agendas or they want to hear about the newsletter. I would propose something like this, but just with two.
So you're talking about a lot of work, which is why I suggest using the county mechanism that already exists. And if you want two lists, the county can add two.
But
Okay,
what,
who's volunteering to
No,
do it?
we're going to set this up on an agenda item. I think we're going into vast detail. I put some opinions up and you shut me down and you keep going. What's up with this?
I'm trying to
This
present,
is a different topic.
I would like to, you know, we can go into the details at a future meeting. But I just want to finish this topic, which is yeah, I mean, I think we need to decide as a council on whether we want to move forward with the newsletter and whether we want to move forward with any updates or changes to the website. And so the other piece, you know, and then I have, you know, social communications as well. So my proposal for the website is consider, and I guess we're not going to have time to debate all of this at this meeting, but I wanted to know if we have any interest. We know it's a big project, and we know we need to do it eventually, but upgrading to a new version of the website, putting budget toward this for this year. I know Greg mentioned that he has experience doing this, so he could potentially volunteer, improving like the visual look and feel of it, optimizing it for mobile, and then, like I said, streamlining the email sign up form. So do we have interest in pursuing this as potentially, not saying we're going to do it, but do we have enough interest from the council in doing
I have
this?
a comment.
Yeah.
So I believe it's an important thing to consider, but in the current year, we should consider it just in the design phase. What are the things we're trying to do? There's a lot of particulars to look at, to become clear on, which is what some people really want to talk about here. So, and we do have a full year, but it would be productive to do it, but really to consider it at what our design goals would be.
Yeah, it'll be a phased implementation for sure.
So as Dave pointed out, that it's a serious technical undertaking as well to do it. So that my goal for 2021 is the design process or design review.
I like that idea.
I do want to throw in though that I can foresee reasons why it does make sense, but I'd be coming at this.
Agreed, but we have a web mistress who spends a lot of effort and has good quality there. So I think you don't want to interrupt that while you try to figure out what it is you'd like to do functionally that's different in design.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying there's another logical reason to pursue an upgrade to the website.
Wasn't disagreeing, just breaking it into two parts.
Yeah, every one of these and a dozen more. Nobody disagrees with that. And sooner or later, our current version won't be supported.
Yeah. Okay, so there's some interest in moving forward on that. That's good. Let's just move on to social.
Just one question about that, Michelle.
Yeah.
So from your discussions about that, if we're doing a design process, if you will, you'd need to have a committee to bring some things to the council as a whole. Is that something you want to set up now as a committee or deal with that in the future?
Well, yeah, I heard interest from Greg. I'm definitely interested in that.
So is Dave, so I imagine.
No, you can leave me off that. It's going to be a huge time sink and I don't have time now.
Okay.
Okay, anyone else? Len, are you?
Yeah. Yes, I am.
Okay, good. Okay. In terms of social, this is pretty minor. We'll just continue doing what we're doing on Facebook and Nextdoor. A couple years ago, I tried to get us our own presence on Nextdoor, because right now the only way that we can post as individual members of the community. So basically having a presence just like we have on Facebook, it would greatly increase anything, the visibility of anything that we post. Problem is, when I tried to do it before, they basically said they weren't open to new agencies. So it's something I'd like to try again and see if just Nextdoor is open to having us as an agency. You probably, if you're on Nextdoor, you see posts from the county pretty frequently. It would be basically having our own presence
So
there.
does that mean we should add you to Nextdoor along with Dave? He's looking at it more functionally.
Yeah, why don't we do that? The two of us can.
Yeah.
I think this requires its own agenda item.
No, it's not an agenda item.
It doesn't.
I think it should be discussed.
It's already been discussed a dozen times at meetings.
Okay, I'm gonna move on.
I'm formally against it.
Okay, you may be the only one.
And it may be moved because Nextdoor had postponed adding new agencies, but
It falls into the whole complications of a newsletter as well. So I think it should be discussed further.
I hoped we had more time to discuss today, but we're already at the end of when we said we would be here, and I want to get out in the next 30 minutes. So we have a couple other things. So I'm going to move on. So next is the treasurer's report. Dave, do you want to briefly talk through that?
Yes, sorry, I got sidetracked and closed that window, but
May I have it
basically,
start? Is this
yep,
what
you got it. Okay. So basically, we've had no significant change since Barbara was treasurer. In fact, we've had no changes. As you can see, mostly what we have are the trivial maintenance things, printer stuff, post office, and the like. So the budget's pretty good for right now. If we were, for example, to decide, yep, we're going to hire somebody to do the website, transition from Squarespace 4 to whatever we end up using, be it Squarespace or something else, that would eat up probably $5,000 to $8,000.
Right.
So just so people are aware of the scale of that.
Should be getting our additional 3,000 for this year soon, right?
Yes, typically happens in March.
Okay.
If I remember right.
And do we need to do anything to approve the recurring items? So I see Zoom, the website renewal, and the PO box as the main recurring items.
No, we don't. Anything, most of them are under $50, and we approved de facto ahead of time the expenditures for paper and the like.
Okay.
The Zoom license, when that comes up in June, if we're still using Zoom, that's big enough. It'll need it. The
Can we
website
go ahead and approve that?
and the
now?
website is also automatic.
Don't we have some sort of provision that we can write a check up to $50 without taking a vote of the council, something like that?
Yes. In addition to the things where we pre-approved indefinitely, we have that $50 is discretionary.
So I would propose that we pre-approve Zoom for this year.
Yeah, good idea.
Second,
Yep.
We need
Secretary called for a vote.
Hold on. Okay, taking the roll, Claire,
For pre-approving expenses, yes.
Zoom specifically.
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Jill,
Yes.
Greg,
yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Passes 7-0.
Great. Okay. Anything else from the treasurer?
Nothing significant in this area now.
Okay. Perfect.
Except I did need to say, at some point, we're going to have to go down to the bank and get the checking account changed.
Oh,
Yeah.
from Barbara.
That requires the minutes from the December 9th meeting of our new officers. And we just take it down to the bank and give them our signatures. And that's for the checks. So that's me and you, Michelle.
Okay.
That's
Bank
the
visit?
only other item on the treasurer's report. So, and the bank has changed its rules over and over. Sometimes we can go down individually. Sometimes we have to be there at the same time. I will.
Which bank is it at?
Yeah.
Tri-county. Tri-county,
Yes. Tri-County.
Is that in Half Moon Bay?
Yeah.
yes.
On Main Street.
Okay. All right. Let's connect offline and figure out when to do that. Is it open right now during COVID?
It has been, yeah.
Okay. We can do that at some point. Okay. Moving on to policies and procedures. I have 10 minutes for this, allocated for this. I just quickly wanted to go through officer roles and responsibilities, our meeting rules and time limits, and then the virtual meeting format. You know, any of these could really snowball into big issues, but we're going to just keep it pretty informational. I just went through our bylaws to look at what are the roles and responsibilities of each elected officer. So I won't even read through this, but basically here are the roles of the chair and the vice chair. It's all available. I'll post this document after the meeting to the meeting agenda section of the blog. And here we have the secretary's responsibilities. And then the treasurer. Okay, so okay, I wanted to just briefly talk about, so we pretty much covered most of this during our special meeting in December when we went through the Brown Act and the Rosenberg Rules of Order. But I just wanted to just be clear that in our meetings, we are following the Rosenberg Rules of Order. I put this little kind of visual that I'm pretty much following through every regular meeting item in terms of like going through each step. We start by announcing the item. We have a sponsor who introduces the item. We go through technical questions only, and we did a pretty good job about doing that in the first meeting in January, and we'll continue to do that, where we just go through the members of the council for technical questions. Then we do public comment. We go back to the chair or back to the board to ask for a motion and second, and then debate the motion and then vote. We have in our bylaws that we want to allow free and fair discussion, but that we can and should like limit discussion. And so I propose that we continue with a 3-minute limit per person, just to continue to try to keep our meetings on time and get out of there before it gets too late. And then I want to really try, I know we haven't been perfect at it today, but stay within the allocated amount of time for each agenda item.
So that implies you're going to have to limit the number of people who can speak. If they each take 3 minutes and you only have 30, that's 10 people.
If we have more people, then we can potentially reduce the amount of time that each person gets.
That's been the standard, is if we have a lot of, we think there are a lot of people who want to talk, and pretty much everybody does this, Appleton Bay, the county, then they cut it back to 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen cases where you've read emails from people. How do we handle people who want to make submissions in writing?
That's why
written in the agendas how to do that. At the bottom of each agenda, it tells explicitly how someone can have an item read, and it is also subject to that 3-minute limit. We don't get a lot of people doing that, but sometimes it happens.
Well, so I'd like to add something here. In regards to a large meeting, when we would limit maybe down to 2 minutes, we would also expect that it's maybe a controversial, there'll be a lot of people coming, and we would ahead of time plan for enough time. Now, with a lot of people speaking at 2 minutes, we can assume that the majority of the issues will be covered. Okay, a lot of people will be agreeing with each other. Now, this is in contrast to an issue that may come up, might be equally important, but just a few people would be showing up. At this point in time, I think it would be terrible, just the worst thing possible, to stop somebody at 3 minutes when there may be only 2 or 3, 4 people speaking, and that, in my opinion, that is not having a free and open discussion. This has happened over and over again. I'd like to see a stop put to it. I think one easy solution is to go around. I totally get 3 minutes. Well, I think 3 minutes is arbitrary, but let's just stick with that for now. Once everybody's done speaking, before we close the issue, ask, are there any new, is there any new information that needs to be, presented before we close? That should be practice by the chair, and then, we'll go with it. But just, be very, very careful from shutting down and stifling discussion on issues that are important to the community and the council members.
So what I've been doing is if we are still within the time allocated for that agenda item and this person wants to speak again, I have been allowing the people who've already spoken to speak again. But I think that, you know, as long as we're in the total amount of time within the total amount of time allocated, that's okay. It's just when we're nearing the end, you know, when we're running late, I will put a stop to having people repeatedly.
Michelle, your agendas are the first agendas we've had in the entire time I've been on the board that had time allocated. And I completely disagree with that methodology.
It's in our bylaws.
A lot with what
Carried that over from what Lynn was doing.
No. Now, the times that have been on the agenda have been likely times. And having allocated times on agenda items is wrong.
Well,
we must not do that.
It's in our bylaws. We can do that.
Can I say something? I agree with everything you said, Dave, except I think what you're talking about are extremely rigid time allocations. They should be flexible. You have to have some time allocations to manage a meeting. I get that. I think most people get that. But this rigidness and just telling a community member, no, we're not going to listen to you. We have to move on. That's just wrong.
Well, everyone does that.
Closing public comment is a standard thing that's done.
Yeah. That's not what I'm talking about, Claire. I'm talking about before you close the public comment, you have to put out that, hey, is there anything else needs to be said? And of course, you know, limit that as things move on. Yes, their time is more and more limited. You know, you can't have somebody stay up there and talk over and over and over and repeating themselves. That's all I got to say.
Couple things. It's striking a balance between giving people time to talk and ending our meetings on time. If people want to, if we want to go past 9:30, you know, if we want to say, okay, instead of trying to get out of our meetings at 9:30, we want to get out of our meetings at 10:30 or 11, then we can certainly allow more people to talk. I've been trying to limit the amount of items that are on each meeting to make sure that we do have adequate time to talk about each issue. Of course, it's hard to predict how much people are going to want to say about a specific issue, but I've been trying to use information that I've learned to specify the times. And Dave, you're wrong. I may, whether you put a time that we're supposed to start talking about an issue or a length of time that the issue is, that each agenda item is supposed to last, it accomplishes the same purpose.
No, that is not what we have been doing in either times I was there or any of the other times that I was part of setting agendas. And it's always okay to continue an item to the next meeting.
I agree. Yes.
So let's look back. We had times that each.
And they were suggested times. And that's the same thing you'll see on the Board of Supervisors agenda. Times are subject to change. At the bottom of our agenda, it says times are subject to change.
But that should be the exception rather than the rule.
And all I'm saying is I do not want to see us try and enforce time limits on agenda items.
So you would rather, okay, so two things. You'd rather me put a time that we're going to start rather than the length of time that the agenda item is going to take?
That is my preference. And you can do either, but if you're going to put length of agenda items, then change the wording at the bottom to say this is the likely time the agenda item is going to take or something like that. But enforcing it is wrong.
Why is that?
So Dave, what's the basis for this? Is there a point of law on this or some best practices? Where are you getting this?
So there is a point of law in that the public has to be allowed to comment.
Up to a point.
Up to a point. They don't have to have multiple times. We can set time limits. But But then there's also the whole reason the MC was set up was to be a communication mechanism to and from the residents. And if you are not allowing the residents to speak because you're cutting off the time limit, then we're not accomplishing that. And on this, Dan and I are in full agreement. And I think if you talk to past council members, most of them would be in full agreement as well. Yes, we want to try to keep to reasonable agenda schedules. Enforcing them, that's different.
But if you
So is one coping action to take a vote when you come near the end of the time allotted to postpone a subsequent agenda item and to extend the meeting, something like that? What's the coping action?
Yes, that is exactly the mechanism. You'll see that occasionally at the Harbor District meetings, occasionally at the Half Moon Bay City Council meetings. We've actually done it ourselves. Sometimes we voted, sometimes we haven't. But in theory, you always need to vote to drop an item or postpone it to a future.
Well, that's only for an item that's a motion.
It's actually for any agenda item. If you're going to drop an agenda item, you need to vote to drop the agenda item. If you want to postpone it,
Drop it.
Half Moon Bay has a thing where they have a hard stop for the meeting time, and if they want to continue, they have to vote to continue.
yes, and otherwise they continue it to the next meeting.
Oh, so there's a default.
Yeah, you can continue to a unspecified future meeting, or you can continue to a future meeting date specified. There's an actual legal term for it, but programmatically, the idea is if somebody wants to speak on an item from the public, then let them. Now, the one exception that I know of to this is the Coastal Commission will say up front, we are limiting total community input on this to 3 hours.
Well, what Michelle did last time is everything died down from the public, as I recall correctly. And you said, is there anybody else? And nobody said anything. And then you said, okay, public comment is closed. And once it's closed, it's closed.
Yes, that's fine.
So
I
what
agree.
I don't understand the nature of this disagreement. Michelle, what are you trying to accomplish here as opposed to what they're
I don't
talking
know.
about?
I don't know what they're disagreeing about. I thought I was running things in the way that was trying to balance input from the public and the ability to, get out of our meetings on time. So if someone wants to see something different, if we want to extend the length of time that we meet for, please throw out suggestions. I'm open.
I'd like to see how you do for a little while, because you've only done one. We've only had really one meeting, and I don't think there's anything for us to disagree about right now.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, do I need to say my case again?
No,
I mean,
we heard it.
because yes, there is a problem.
You want to extend the length of time that we meet for?
I don't want community members to be cut off. If they have something to say, I think it's wrong for you to say, no,
We can't have a 3
we
minute.
don't have any more time for you. Sorry.
But that's
Go
not what happened.
It is what happened.
No, because like Michelle said, is there anybody else? And they said no. So she cut it off. And then after that, people
I'm
don't.
saying that's okay. I'm saying
What?
that's okay.
Okay,
I
then
am
you're not arguing then.
Right. It was
No,
the
well, there has
wording-
been times when community members wanted to add something after the council members have talked. And there have been times where, no, your time is up and we have to move on.
That's
And
when public comment is closed after
Nope.
the council members have talked.
nope. these
That's
are
in the rules of
agenda
order.
items.
Dan. That's in the rules of order.
No,
Yeah,
it's not.
With public comments
You're
being
making
closed,
stuff up.
then it is the discretion of the chair whether they recognize somebody as public or not. And that part's okay as long as there was a reasonable chance for everybody to
Yeah.
speak.
Sorry.
I was reacting to from what Michelle said was time allocation in an enforcement mode. And then the second part of this is not the public, it's the council. And that's been an issue for Dan in the past. And so all I'm saying is I am totally opposed to any form of allocated time agenda.
Well,
Yeah.
it's in our
Opposed,
bylaws. I was
absolutely.
pulling it up. That we should, let me find it. Let's see. The community council may adopt reasonable regulations governing such periods, including but not limited to regulations limiting the total amount of time allocated for questions and comments by members of the community. There was another section where it said,
But we've never adopted any rules like that. And I'm opposed.
I've seen in Montera where they have to take a vote to extend the time of a meeting. I assume we have to do that. So there
No,
is by
because
definition a limit.
We don't, but we could. We've never set an actual time limit on our meetings.
yeah, so it was a moderated, regular meetings, moderated discussion period. There shall be a period at each meeting set aside for and conducted by as a moderated discussion session in which all members of the community, maybe that's talking about public comment.
That's the public comment part, yeah.
And then each agenda item period, a separate period for questions and comments by members of the community shall be provided with respect to each agenda item. And we do that.
I think
The
we're really
definition
where
of the word period, what the definition of the word period, does it include time limits?
That's where the discussion issue is.
So yeah, the way I see it, it's a balance between trying to get out on time and trying to let everyone speak. So that's the question I would just pose to the council is, do we want to continue to make our meetings longer than 2.5 hours regularly to allow for more public comment?
most of the time we're just talking about 60 seconds or 120 seconds.
Mhm.
Okay. So
I don't know.
If-
I
if
would
it-
say,
if it
I
becomes a
would
big
say-
problem, if it becomes a big problem, we can always have the option to
We
either
meant
vote to
11.
table it or vote to extend it a little bit, case by case.
I think you have to do your best planning based on the size of the agenda items, and that's a feel thing. But
Yeah.
I do agree, we should take a vote to extend meetings, and that'll determine whether we have more time.
Okay, to do that.
Extend the meeting could also mean deferring agenda items.
Yeah, so again, the planning part's all good. Nobody's ever arguing about that. If we want to set an official ending time and a vote to extend past that, that's an agenda item that we'll have to add to the agenda. I'm not opposed to it. I'm not particularly in favor of it.
Are you talking about now or at each?
No, it has to go on an agenda at an MCC meeting. If we want to set an official ending time, it requires a vote to extend.
So I propose that we just have a target, nothing has to be official. We just all agree that we don't want to be on the meetings late into the night. I think we will all agree on that. We don't have to vote. We don't have to go for anything official. If it becomes a problem, we can vote at the time.
Okay, it is somewhere, and I'm not finding it right now, that we aim to get out by 9:30. So I'm going to continue
Yes.
to follow that.
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
And we have a speaking limit time of a standard of 3 minutes, correct?
No, absolutely. That's totally arbitrary. That was never voted on. And
I think 3 minutes is appropriate for that discussion.
Yeah,
so-
Okay, so let's,
but not always.
so since
3
Dan.
minutes for whom? The public or for us? Or
Glenn
both?
says both.
Wait, can I suggest that we stop talking about it at the retreat? We have a council member who feels really strongly about it. The rule is that can be a request for an agenda item. So Michelle, you have a request for an agenda item to discuss what the public comment speaking limit time should be. Does that match what you're asking for, Dan?
All of this is unnecessary. The spirit is in the bylaws. Free and full discussion. Do not stifle. Do not over control. That's it.
Seems to be disagreement on it. So why don't we talk about it?
Oh, you agree? Should stifle and you should over
Well,
control.
I don't, Dan, I think that 3 minute increments are fine. You do a 3 minute increment. If you need another one, you can ask for another one when the time comes up.
I'm okay with that as long as you allow that. No,
Absolutely.
wait a second. Wait a second.
And suggest
on.
you should ask the questions you want to ask.
So what's problematic about your method, Len, is that what you effectively do is you break up conversations, and that makes it worse for everybody. You do not want to go in that direction. You do not want to
What the 3-minute limit-
intentionally break up people's thoughts. In the middle of the thoughts, the audience has to re-wrap around where we were before. No, that's not a good practice. I'm going to stop there.
Okay,
Yeah,
Mike,
let's stop there.
let's leave it there.
Yeah. Okay. So the last thing I just wanted to discuss under this section, virtual meetings. I think we will be continuing to do virtual meetings for the foreseeable future. We will discuss at a later date, if and when we go back to in-person meetings this year. So I don't want to go
So
through that.
there is a question I have about that. Let's suppose you have a committee or a group meeting on things and they want to talk with people in the county. Can they set up a Zoom meeting to do that? And if they do it, is there any obligation if it's just a group of 3 or less to do that as a public meeting?
No,
Or just use the tool?
just
No.
use the tool.
Well, we did hear something on Brown Act with you can talk one-on-one with members of the community, but when you set up something with multiple members of the community, that gets a little bit more into potential Brown Act violations, and Dave can probably speak more.
No, there's any individual council member can talk to as many community members as they want, singly or multiply. That's not a violation of the Brown Act. As long as they make clear they are not speaking for the council.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think we should use our council Zoom account to do that, though.
Oh, that I agree with. Yeah. If you want to do that, you have to set up your own Zoom account or some other mechanism.
Yeah, it had a note that said members can't work with public groups because then it becomes a committee from Tim's presentation, but I don't know the details on that. So I think if you want to do something like that, let's talk and we can make sure we run it by county council.
So I have some questions I'd like to address to Tim. Why don't I fire you off an email? Because I know that it'll have to go through you to get his answer.
Okay, let's do that. Okay. That is all that I have on the agenda for today. We're 30 minutes behind schedule, but not too bad. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Second?
Go through the roll, Lynn.
Okay, Jill,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Claire.
She's on mute.
Yes, and thanks for the participation.
Michelle,
Yes, and thank
and
you.
I say yes. Good job, Michelle.
Thank you, everyone. It's important stuff.
Thank you guys. We'll see you on Wednesday,
Okay, have a good weekend.
Saturday. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.